Good morning, 6 o'clock, Wednesday, the 12th of November. These are the headlines this hour. The Prime Minister readies for a leadership battle amid claims of an imminent bid to oust him. Donald Trump says he has an obligation to sue the BBC as he threatens a $1 billion lawsuit over speech edits. Climate summit chaos. Dozens of protesters forced their way into COP30 and clashed with security in Brazil. The front line of Europe's people smuggling crisis. Sky News is there as migrants are smuggled from Libya, only to find themselves trapped, abused or returned.
A lot of desperation and urging us. They think we've got something to do with it. They're urging us to take them to Europe.
And at 6:40, we'll see what's making the papers today with Charlotte Hill, the CEO of the Felix Project. Very good morning to you. Coming up shortly, we're going to bring you a remarkable report from the deadliest people smuggling route to Europe. Our special correspondent, Alex Crawford's had exclusive access to the boats fishing migrants out of the Mediterranean. More on that in a few moments. At first, our top story this morning. Keir Starmer gearing up for the fight of his political life, vowing to face any challenge to his leadership head-on rather than stand aside. Sky News understands the Prime Minister believes he's facing an imminent coup by Labour MPs, nervous about unwaveringly low opinion polls and a budget that may spark even further backlash. Let's bring in our political correspondent, Mari Aurora. Mari, what's going on?
Well, exactly what is going on, Gareth. Let me give you the lay of land to start with. So allegations have started emerging over the past 24 hours, 48 hours about plotting. And it seems like Number 10 is really on the attack. The fight back has begun. So the PM's allies are accusing different people of potentially plotting against the Prime Minister to try and get rid of him. And one of the names that they are giving us is Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary. Wes Streeting has always been seen as a kind of rising star in the party, a very effective communicator, always does well when he is speaking. But nonetheless, Wes Streeting's team have now had to kind of take the extraordinary intervention of actually outright denying this on the record. So they have issued a response, an official response, saying these claims are categorically untrue. Wes's focus has entirely been on cutting waiting lists for the first time in 15 years, recruiting 2,500 more GPs and building the NHS, rebuilding the NHS that saved his life. Now, the Prime Minister's allies have said that he has vowed, the PM has vowed, to fight any leadership challenge that comes his way. He is not going to be standing down. And his allies also say that actually a leadership challenge would not only cause a kind of long and drawn-out leadership competition, but also spook the markets, which could have a bad effect on our borrowing costs, but also damage the Labour brand and create chaos, which is something that they always criticise the Conservatives for. So, I mean, for now, the PM is really on shaky ground. Is that new? Not really. Is it perhaps more shaky than it was before? Yes. And also, there is a settled view in many senior figures of the party that the PM just doesn't have the charisma or the communication skills to really take on Nigel Farage at a time when Reform is just doing so well in the polls.
And Reform have been doing so well in the polls for a while now, so that kind of poses the question, why now for Keir Starmer and the Labour Party?
Well, exactly. The question is, why now? Nothing's new. Lots of Labour MPs, if you talk to them privately, have never necessarily been a fan of Keir Starmer. Often that he was the least worst option. Many of them have never really believed in him. So, but that's normal whenever you have a leader. No one is ever going to have 100% of the party entirely behind them. But the timing is interesting. So we know the budget is coming up on the 26th of November, so it's not long left to wait. Now, there are really kind of two theories here. Either around the budget, I found the expectations that Rachel Reeves is potentially going to breach a manifesto pledge by increasing income tax. Labour MPs are frustrated about that. There is another theory that actually the timing would actually be more helpful if they were to try and oust the PM after May, after those elections that could be really difficult in Wales, in Scotland, across obviously councils in the UK, in England, London most notably. But then there are also two theories about exactly why this might be happening. One is that plotting is happening because people want him gone. The second, perhaps more interesting theory is that this is actually number 10 trying to get ahead of plotting. So Sam Coates has been speaking to some senior sources, one cabinet minister, that told him, if you're a bit worried in number 10, you're trying to pitch roll and ward off people who are maybe thinking about the need to position themselves by starting to get out rumours of plots and hoping that the political system turns against them for disloyalty. So there is another theory here that actually this is number 10 creating this drama, trying to actually get ahead of any plots and essentially nip them in the bud before they can actually gain any level of traction. And I find that plot very interesting.
We will watch it with bated breath. Mari, for the moment, thank you so much. Join us live from Westminster. A reminder, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, on Mornings with Ridge and Frost just after 7 o'clock this morning. Plenty more coming up as well on the Politics Hub live blog. Now then, Donald Trump's spoken for the first time about his threat to sue the BBC for $1 billion, saying he has an obligation to do so. He was speaking on Fox News in the US. Here's what he had to say.
Are you going ahead and suing the BBC?
Well, I guess I have to. You know, why not? Because they defrauded the public, and they've admitted it, and they're top echelon.
Director General and the CEO
This
both
is
resigned.
within one of our great allies. You know, this is supposedly our great ally, BBC. The government has a chunk of that one, I guess, but that's a pretty sad event. They actually changed my January 6th speech, which was a beautiful speech, which was a very calming speech, and they made it sound radical, and they actually changed it. What they did was rather incredible. They're showing me the results later on, the results of what they did, how they butchered it up, but it was very dishonest.
Tonight, you are saying to our viewers that you will go forward and file a defamation lawsuit against the BBC.
Well, I think I have an obligation to do it because you can't allow people to do that. I couldn't allow 60 Minutes. You know, we settled that one for many millions of dollars, and I couldn't have allowed that to take place.
Let's bring in our correspondent, Sadia Chowdhury. And Sadia, yesterday there was a bit of murmurations that perhaps the BBC could fend this off, that it wouldn't come to fruition. The president there doubling down on that Truth Social post, saying that he's got an obligation to sue the BBC.
Yeah, I think the thing is, if anyone thought that President Trump was going to step down or leave it at that when BBC bosses resigned over the weekend, they were wrong. This is one of the most litigious people on the planet. He is known for suing people, and this really means a lot to him. You can hear it in that clip where he talks about the BBC was a supposed ally of his. He called it a very sad event and said it was very dishonest and that the head man had to quit. But it's where he says it's his obligation to sue, which just gives you an insight into the way he thinks. This is a man who believes in lawsuits, who really believes in taking people to court and bleeding them dry. There was no mention there of the $1 billion claim, which has been reported previously, but he's clearly out to show his might in this fight with the BBC. There was also that reminder there about his lawsuit with CBS and its parent company, Paramount, over its editing of a clip in its 60 Minutes news program. I'll tell you a little bit about that, what happened there. They had edited a clip of Kamala Harris, who was at the time Donald Trump's rival in the presidential race. So it wasn't to do with him, and it wasn't a clip of his or anything that he had said that was edited, but he said that it was edited in a way to sort of tip the scales in favor of the Democratic Party. He sued CBS and its parent company, Paramount, and they paid out $16 million to him in July. That's around 13.5 million pounds. Two big differences that come out to me with that is that, one, that clip wasn't even about him, and second of all, CBS didn't express any regret or issue an apology. So you can expect with the BBC, the president has been hit hard with this. This hurts him, and he's going to take them a long way.
Sadia, good to have you with us. Thank you so much. Now then, let's talk about these dramatic scenes from COP30, the climate summit in Brazil. Dozens of protesters forcing their way into the event, clashing with security guards at the entrance. Our climate reporter, Victoria Seabrook, was there.
Well, this was highly unusual for one of these UN climate summits, which are normally, well, there's heated negotiations, but otherwise very calm. But then again, there's never been one hosted in Brazil before and never had such a huge contingent of indigenous people flock here to make their voices heard. They were protesting outside the venue, raising concerns about the impact on their health from all the threats to the land around them. And then as it started to die down, there was a breakaway group that stormed into the venue. There's 2 layers of security. The first one is airport-like scanners, and then after that you have to scan your pass. They managed to get through the first layer, and they were then met by UN security and venue security that barricaded them and managed to push them back. But there is a lot of security at this event, at these kinds of events. It tends to be quite light touch in general, but there's UN security, and also for the purpose of this, armed federal police have been brought in as well, so likely some questions about how this managed to happen.
Victoria Seabrook there for us in Belém. Let's talk about this now. Described as the deadliest and most dangerous people smuggling path to Europe. Migrants leaving through Libya facing unpaid and forced labour, kidnapping, trafficking and rape on a weeks-long journey via sea. Our special correspondent Alex Crawford and her team were given exclusive access to the boats fishing those migrants out of the Mediterranean. Here's her report.
We're with the forces fighting people smugglers in East Libya and watch them trying to smash the gangs. We witness the boatloads risking their lives on new sea routes to Europe and see those who fled war taken back to Libya. This is the centre of Europe's smuggling crisis, and we're travelling to the heart of it.
So now we're in Tobruk. It's meant to be a key transit point, a key launching area from where many migrants will connect with smugglers and go over to Europe.
This is one of the main smuggler junctions. The streets are crowded with those wanting to go to Europe. They're all waiting to cross the sea, we're told. The officers are overwhelmed, and many are set on going to Britain.
United Kingdom, wow, that's good. I hope I will be there soon, right?
The unusual access we've got to East Libya is to show us exactly this. The crowds ready to risk their lives on small boats, with many telling us they're escaping war in Sudan.
And when we go back, maybe we're going to die. When we go back to Sudan.
All is hungry. All is hungry. Here is not good. Sudan is not good. Where is God? Everything is in hand of God. If God say that you are going to make it to Europe, I think nothing will stop us.
They live in miserable, cramped and dirty conditions, waiting all the time for the smuggler's call. It could change their life or end it. Some, still very young, have the scars of the wars they fled and tell us of their desperation to leave Libya.
Got a big scar here.
Yeah. Sometimes it's paining, you know. So we just need your help, guys. The situation here in this place that we live is too bad. We just need your help.
I was interested in whether you're scared or frightened of the authorities here.
Yeah, we are very scared. So the authorities is treating us very bad because now the authority can come and chase you from this house, can beat you and can take you to jail.
The sea operations in this part of the Mediterranean are all under the command of the youngest son of General Khalifa Haftar, the warlord ruling the whole of East Libya. The general wants to be seen as Europe's answer to the people smuggling business. So the East Libyans are showing us their efforts intercepting illegal boats and taking them back to North Africa. It's a controversial policy which takes the crew into European search and rescue waters.
We are tantalizingly close to Greece. You can see it through the haze, the sort of island about 40 miles off. And the East Libyan Coast Guard is waiting here to see if it can spot boats which will inevitably turn up, which are trying to head to those islands.
Our distance...
It's the middle of the night when the call comes in.
Yeah, we see you. That's why I stop the vessel and I point my searchlight on this spot, approximate direction of this boat.
The crew on a cargo vessel has raised the alarm, but the recovery of the dinghy passengers is left to the East Libyans.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy full of people. Difficult to tell how many, but absolutely jam-packed. Legs hanging off, they're so full. They're saying, help me, as they were coming closer. And they're trying to throw them a rope to pull them in.
Panic is setting in. Their engine is broken and they've been nearly 4 days at sea. They're exhausted and wet and desperately thirsty. Many appear dehydrated and very weak. The dinghy is rapidly taking on water and minutes away from sinking. They don't realise yet, but they've just been pulled aboard a brigade ship run by one of the most powerful armed groups in the region. It's a TBZ ship under the command of General Haftar's son, Saddam. His forces are accused of a range of crimes by human rights groups, including rape, torture and smuggling. At this point, the ship's passengers think they're still going to Europe.
This boat is taking you back to Libya.
Really?
Yes.
I don't know.
These are the East Libyan Coast Guard.
And if we say that we're gonna go next, for example, in Greek, we're gonna go or we cannot go?
They're taking you away from Greece. They're taking you to Libya.
We don't like Libyan exactly because we don't like Libyan, of course.
Other passengers are equally shocked as the crew tries to placate them.
If we didn't come to you, I think you die.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah?
As their dreams of Europe fade, fear steps in. Throw me in the water, let me die, this man says, but I'm not going back to Sudan or Libya.
They're pretty desperate. They keep on saying, don't take us back, don't take us back. We don't want to go back. A number of them saying that they've tried before, failed, and now trying again, but a lot of desperation and urging us. They think we've got something to do with it, and they're urging us to take them to Europe.
The interception of asylum seekers so close to European territory is highly contentious, returning them to war zones and unstable countries even more so. In cases like this, you don't think too hard about where you are in the sea, the captain tells us. You saw, water was already inside their boat, he goes on. 2 or 3 hours and they'd all be dead. It's a long night back to East Libya, where it's difficult to lodge asylum claims because the only UN-recognised government is in the rival and separated West.
I think a lot of people will wonder about the whole ethics of picking up people who have fled a war zone, who have fled instability, and they say they're terrified for their lives, and who pick them up off the coast of what they consider safety in Europe, and then they've taken them all the way back again to Libya, another country which is considered to be very fractured and very unstable and full of a certain number of dangers.
The men tell us they're all from Sudan too, and legally allowed to stay in Libya, but none want to. And now they're about to be returned to what they were fleeing from, one of the world's worst humanitarian disasters. There's a frantic dash for freedom, a sense they've come too far trying to escape war to give up now. But it's a fruitless, desperate gesture. He knows, along with the rest of them, that they're headed to a detention centre. They'll be locked up now for an unknown time and then sent back to a war zone. They are a picture of despair and helplessness. Alex Crawford, Sky News, East Libya.
And Alex will be with Sophy and Will throughout the morning here on Sky News. Let's bring you up to speed on what's leading the papers, shall we? Let's start with The Guardian and the Prime Minister's future. They understand that Number 10's on high alert amid fears of that leadership challenge. The threat potentially from senior Labour figures, the paper says, including, reportedly, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. Financial Times news the Prime Minister probably doesn't want to hear ahead of the budget. Unemployment standing at 5% in the UK. That's the highest since the course of the pandemic. The Eye has the government's announcement that it's reconsidering its decision not to compensate millions of women born in the 1950s, the so-called WASPI women. Trouble at the BBC fronts The Telegraph. They're quoting the outgoing Director General there, Tim Davie. "We are the very best of society," blames the BBC's enemies for bias scandal, according to the paper. Moving on, shall we, to the Mirror. The mother of murdered schoolboy Harvey Borgus tells the paper she's willing to meet her son's killer. And on a lighter note, The Sun hears that new rules will be in place for the upcoming series of I'm a Celebrity. Plenty more of the day's paper. 6:40, we're going to have the news review. Joining us will be Charlotte Hill, Chief Executive of the Felix Project. Also still to come, the award-winning actor Samantha Morton speaks to Sky News about the struggles she's faced growing up in the care system.
Turkey is burying its dead.
Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
Eastern Libya is the new doorway to Europe for people being smuggled from Africa and Asia.
We are close to Greece. You can see it.
We've obtained unprecedented access to the authorities.
Do you feel you're just scratching the surface?
We've been on the raids, out with the Coast Guard,
That's so desperate.
and inside the detention centres.
How did you cope with that?
To find what's pushing people to Europe and what's driving the authorities here to stop them.
Well, welcome back. Sky News has been investigating the death of a young woman who left the care system and became known as the Unseen Girl. Anita was 18 when she took her own life after being failed by everyone who was supposed to look after her. Well, our People and Politics correspondent Nick Martin spoken to the award-winning actor and director Samantha Morton, who was also brought up in care and has this story. It contains references to self-harm and suicide.
I was a child of the state, just like Nanita. But I think it's really important that we all know that not every two stories are the same. I was put in care at birth and then in and out till I got the letter to say I was no longer, child of the state, if you like. I was no longer their responsibility, kicked out. And I was kicked out at 16 and put into a homeless hostel. I remember one Christmas where I'd actually ran away because I was being abused at the home, and I'd been away for a couple of weeks sleeping rough, and at the back of the bins behind a co-op, I could just, traipse the streets in the day, shoplifting sandwiches or whatever, and then just get my head down there at night. And I'd had enough. It was freezing. I know it was Christmas, and Christmas Day was coming up, so I went back to the home. And no one said Happy Christmas. I didn't have a present. There wasn't a card. They didn't even say welcome home. Nobody asked where I'd been. Nobody asked what happened to me. just to think about what it would have been like for Nonita. Certainly living alone is on one hand liberating, but also terrifying.
That isolation and that lack of purpose can become dangerous, can it?
I think lack of purpose for anyone can become dangerous, but when people are a little bit broken inside through no fault of their own, people don't always acknowledge that, and it's little telltale signs. And young people often reach out for help, but if the help doesn't come their way, then they are so lost. The lack of care historically is shocking, but the lack of care today is worse. And I say this really seriously, it is worse than it ever was, Nick. Because back then, it felt like there was at least some comeuppance. A little bit, you know. Child of the state, therefore the state was answerable, perhaps. The system is not fit for purpose. It needs to be, literally root and branch, it needs to be completely rethought.
Where does the accountability come from for when a child dies in the care of the state? Who gets held accountable?
People failing to do their jobs, and the consequences of that, Nick, are that people like Nonita die. And I believe that that is state manslaughter. Nobody intended to murder her or kill her, but due to their absolute abhorrent neglect and lack of care on duty, failing to do their jobs properly has massive consequences, especially when a young person has stated that they are going to kill themselves. Why she wasn't in a secure accommodation on suicide watch, I just don't know. Why she was dismissed from CAMS before she turned into an adult when they knew quite clearly that she was very vulnerable. This wasn't an accident. Nonita said, "I am going to kill myself. Please help me, please help me, please help me, please help me, please help me." And nobody helped her. But they were being paid to help her. Your money, my money, taxpayers' money. So those people, those individuals that didn't do their job properly, as far as I'm concerned, Nick, they need to be in a dock.
Samantha Morton.
I mean, for me, this is really nothing short of a miracle. And I dedicate this award to every child in care today, or who's been in care, or is suffering, or who didn't survive.
I think that if I can help anybody else because of what I've been through, even having a conversation with you today, it's my duty of care. It's my responsibility. I survived the care system, but have I survived? I'm 48. I think I've done all right, but my mental health is still, you know, delicate. I know women and men who've been in the care system who are in their 50s and 60s who are struggling massively with their mental health, and actually much older people that have killed themselves because of what they went through as a kid. And I'm not lost for words that this has happened, but I do get lost for words that people that should care don't care enough to want to make the changes. It's a real person that existed that isn't here anymore to speak for themselves, so we have to do it for her.
If you've been affected by any of the issues raised in that story, do contact the Samaritans. The number 116-123, that's 116-123, or send an email, jo@samaritans.org. Still to come here on Mornings, we've got the latest in sport. Cristiano Ronaldo revealing his last major tournament. Well, it could be when he potentially retires.
Turkey is burying its dead.
Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
Eastern Libya is the new doorway to Europe for people being smuggled from Africa and Asia.
We are close to Greece. You can see it.
We've obtained unprecedented access to the authorities.
Do you feel you're just scratching the surface?
We've been on the raids, out with the Coast Guard,
Absolutely desperate.
and inside the detention centres.
How did you cope with that?
To find what's pushing people to Europe and what's driving the authorities here to stop them.
Well, welcome back. You're watching Mornings on Sky News. These are the headlines this hour. It's Keir Starmer vowing to fight any challenge to his leadership rather than stand aside amid claims of plotting by MPs to oust him. Number 10 started preparing for a coup ahead of what's expected to be an unpopular budget later this month. One of those being touted, the Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who'll be on with Ridge and Frost in just over half an hour. Donald Trump says he has an obligation to sue the BBC for misrepresenting his comments ahead of the January 6th attacks on the US Capitol. The president's threatened to sue the BBC for $1 billion over edits made in a documentary in 2024.
You are saying to our viewers that you will go forward and file a defamation lawsuit against the BBC.
Well, I think I have an obligation to do it because you can't allow people to do that.
Dozens of protesters forced their way into the COP30 climate summit in Brazil. The crowd clashed with security guards at the entrance, demanding access to the compound, where thousands of delegates from around the world are attending this year's UN convention. Sky News has been given rare access to boats stopping desperate migrants headed for Europe after fleeing through Libya. The passage is described as the deadliest and most dangerous route, with migrants facing unpaid and forced labour, kidnapping, trafficking, and then being returned after capture. Well, for more on all those top stories, in particular the Starmer Leadership Challenge, check out Cheat Sheet, the podcast with Sophy and Wilf.
So Keir Starmer's allies are having to brief us overnight to say he is ready to fight off leadership challenges. Sorry, what?
Yeah.
Where's this come from? So I guess first, what are these challenges that are being alluded to? And are we really in a position, people have talked about him not being popular at the moment, that he has to fight these off?
I think it tells us two things really clearly. The first one is it consolidates just what a fragile position Keir Starmer is in right now and how worried they are in number 10. They've got the budget, which is almost certainly going to break the manifesto on tax. He's got Nigel Farage breathing down his neck. He's had issues with the Chancellor. This is a man who is not safe in his premiership, and Labour MPs are talking about it, as you'd expect. The second thing that I would say it's so weird that they briefed it into the papers overnight and to broadcasters like ourselves.
But directly about Wes Streeting as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, what I was going to say is that what they've done is they've spoken to journalists like ourselves, overnight. And for me, the exact reason that they're doing that, which is a weird thing to do, because why would you talk about a leadership contest if no one else is talking about it? The reason they're doing it is because they know that Wes Streeting is on the morning round this morning, right? So that means he's talking to us, he's talking to other broadcasters as well. And they want to force him to publicly deny mounting a leadership challenge and to publicly back Keir Starmer, which of course makes it much more difficult for him to be involved in any shenanigans in a couple of weeks.
Plenty more with the gang wherever you get your podcasts. You can download it online. Now then, time for the sport.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
club made a great pitch to me, that they wanted me. They gave me a 4-year contract. All the stops were out. They made me feel really welcome.
We arrived at the airport there in Madrid, and there were 50, 30, 40, 50 journalists, cameras, and we thought, oh, they come for this movie star, you know? Suddenly we see, Jesus Christ, Jimmy, it's for you.
It's always difficult losing a great player. Jimmy, for me, was always a world-class striker. Probably not talked about as much, I don't think, as to some of the other great strikers, but I was fortunate enough to play with him.
We obviously made a very good profit on him. If you just take the business transaction, not the football emotion, the transaction was a good deal because we bought him for 2 and we sold him for £12 million.
In 2 years, got 6 times their money. I was not a big earner at the time at the club. So for them, it was a big gain.
He's settling into his new surrounds, the player renamed Judas Floyd Money in the Bank when he was drummed out of Ellen Road. But stories of excessive demands were fictional, according to Atletico's new signing.
I was supposed to stay there. I was supposed to sign a new contract and feel happy. If they can ask 12 million for a player, the rest is all clear.
Were you asking to be the most highly paid player in the Premiership, as we're led to believe?
No, don't believe the figures at all. Don't believe the figures at all.
You didn't want £40,000?
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Time for a look at the weather now. Not great. It's mild and windy, but it will be wet in northern parts, East Anglia and southern England. Northern Scottish and Northern Irish coast seeing further showers this morning as well, while the Midlands, southern England and the south of Wales will see heavier, more prolonged rain. The southeast should brighten up, however, central parts look fine for a while. Coming up next here on Sky News, we're going to discuss the stories making the headlines in the papers with our panellist, Charlotte Hill.
Turkey is burying its dead. Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battles, skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
Eastern Libya is the new doorway to Europe for people being smuggled from Africa and Asia.
We are close to Greece. You can see it.
We've obtained unprecedented access to the authorities.
Do you feel you're just scratching the surface?
We've been on the raids, out with the Coast Guard,
Absolutely desperate.
and inside the detention centres.
How did you cope with that?
To find what's pushing people to Europe and what's driving the authorities here to stop them.
We are under
Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Let's take a look at the stories making the headlines in the papers today with our news review. Joined by Charlotte Hill, Chief Executive of the Felix Project. Good to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Before we get on to the papers, talk to us about the Felix Project.
So
what do you guys do?
We rescue and redistribute surplus food. There is about a third of the food we produce globally is thrown away.
A third?
A third. It's insane. It's one of the greatest contributors to climate change that we have. At the same time, as a third of the food is thrown away, we have about 11 million people living in food insecurity in this country. So our job is to be the bridge between the food supply over here and the people who need the food over here. We do that through about 8,000 community organisations right across the UK with our partners Fair Share, getting food to communities who really need it. So a lot of what's covered, the pressures that people are facing in society at the moment, we see day to day, really the reality of what people are facing.
I remember going to the Fair Share distribution hub in Yorkshire, who were then working with the Archer Project in Sheffield.
Yeah.
And it's kind of mind-boggling. It's boxes and boxes and boxes of food that was perfectly decent.
It is absolutely...
How have we got to this point?
It's high quality and high quantities of food. Genuinely, there's all sorts of reasons why food is surplus, but our farmers at the moment are only incentivised by the government. They spend about £750 million a year incentivising farmers to send that surplus food to anaerobic digestion or animal feed when we could be getting it into our system. So we're doing a lot with the government at the moment, with the food strategy and other things, to try and say, please, 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 our farmers are working really hard to grow amazing products in this country. Let's incentivise them to get it into our system so that we can get it to people who need fresh fruit and vegetable desperately.
And it's not all just coming from farms, is it? Some of it comes from retailers as well.
It does.
To you.
It does. We're working really closely, not just with retailers, actually, with manufacturers.
Right.
We've been bringing together, actually, with the King. His Majesty has been leading something called the Coronation Food Project, bringing all of the food industry together to say, actually, collectively, we can solve this problem. There's enough food in this country to feed everybody. Whether it's at the farm gate, whether it's manufacturers, whether it's retailers, there is a huge amount more we could be doing to get it to people who really need it.
That's not a bad feathering a cap or person just to lean on somebody, is it? The King's asked about this.
Yeah,
Those black spider memos with that handwriting.
Do you know what? He has been passionately talking about this and sustainability for our farmers for decades. He was well ahead of his time.
Well, there's plenty more to get through as well. I could talk to you about that all day.
Yeah.
We will do so over the coming weeks, I'm sure. And let's also take a look at some of the stories making the papers this morning. Front page of the Times. I was just interested in this story because there's so much focus at the moment as a result of the BBC on the special relationship between the UK and the US.
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time. And when it comes to intelligence, there's nobody closer. But this story on the front page of the Times, Britain stops sharing intel on drug boats after US raids. And so this is because the US began launching lethal strikes against boats in September. 76 people, the paper reports, killed across the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. And the UK is concerned about kind of being part of that chain of information.
Yeah.
And it cites the Royal Navy's take on how you prosecute this kind of war on drugs, which is last September a Royal Navy warship intercepted a narco sub, seized £160 million worth of cocaine and arrested 11 people. And it's like, look, we can go about this in a different direction.
Yeah.
It was just interesting that, you know, it's not always necessarily... You can be friends with someone, you can't necessarily always have to agree with them.
And goodness, all of these stories across all of the front pages make me think, goodness me, I'm glad I'm not the Prime Minister or the Chancellor, because they've got some really difficult decisions to make. And actually, our special relationship with the States at the moment, I think, is a really good example of that. We absolutely need to, for all the economic pressures that we know about, need to stay close to the States because of the special relationship, trade, all of those things. But actually, morally, is it right for us to be giving intelligence and sharing intelligence that leads to, as you've said, 76 people so far being killed with these bombings? So some really, really difficult decisions.
Yeah.
But actually, we've got to stick to our morals, surely. We've got to stick to actually how ethically do we want to partner and sit alongside other people.
And surely, if you are best mates, geopolitically with someone, you should be able to look them in the eye and go, I disagree with you on that one.
Well, you'd think so.
You would think.
It
depends who's in a particular White House.
Exactly. I was going to say, I think it depends who your friends are.
Indeed. You talked about the Chancellor, actually, in that moment there. Front page of the Daily Mail this morning.
Yeah, do you know what? It was really interesting looking across all the papers, how they've all gone from a obviously different angle around this. You know, we've got a lot more people claiming universal credit, a lot more people, and it's a big pressure for the government at the moment who are not in work for lots of different reasons. And at the same time, as we see in our day job all the time, people who are living in destitution, who are really struggling on universal credit to not be able to get by, to not be able to put food on the table for themselves and their families. So we've got a big challenge as to, first of all, how we make universal credit pay enough for the people who are, you know, with the cost of living increasing, but also how the Chancellor and others can move people out of universal credit and into work. So I thought it was really interesting looking across all the papers how this has been covered really differently. The Mail here is really pushing saying that the national insurance raid on businesses is pushing, you know, businesses to have to push people out of work. There is a big challenge here. How do we make the country productive? How do we make sure we've got a welfare state that isn't, you know, expanding and expanding, and you've got the left wing of the Labour Party pushing really hard on making sure we are having enough in the benefits pot for the people who are really, really struggling right now. We've got to work with employers to make sure employers can get meaningful careers and jobs for people.
We maybe say the phrase cost of living crisis a little less than we had been doing so. What is the reality? For draws on your services?
Goodness me, I think if you just... You will feel it as you go into a shop and feel how much more food costs now. If you are a person who is probably one of our key workers, maybe a cleaner in a hospital, a teaching assistant in a school, once you've put fuel in your car to get to work, once you've paid your increased energy costs, once you've, you know, paid your rent or mortgage, which went up in recent years, and you've probably got a bit of debt that you sat on because of the pandemic or various things, the only elastic bit of your outgoings is food, and we are seeing it all the time. A third of working Londoners now are skipping meals to feed their children. A third. That's someone on every street, in every community, is struggling to... and never thought they'd be in food insecurity. So we are seeing stark challenges. And you're right, it's not getting the same headlines it once was around the cost of living. But goodness, the reality on the ground is it's never been tougher for people.
And the pressure that we're seeing here, unemployment rate spikes to 5%, that will surely play into this.
It absolutely will, and it will play into all these different pressures. I'm pleased to see the Prime Minister is erring towards lifting the two-child benefit cap. We've got over 4 million children living in poverty in this country, and obviously that's connected to people not being in work and all of these other challenges, but we have to live in a compassionate country that isn't seeing children, you know, living in real struggling poverty.
Moving on to front page of the Metro, and this remarkable story that kind of talks about the tale as old as time, of if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Yes.
And then the challenges of then regulating the internet. And the combination of the two kind of dovetailing together. And so this is a Chinese criminal mastermind with a £5.5 billion cryptocurrency scam who fled China, ended up renting a £17,000 a month property in London.
A month? My goodness.
And when someone that was working for her went to go and try and buy a property because she's trying to leverage all of this money that's being fraudulently produced, the authorities here went, oh, hang on a second, where's this money coming from? And they were struggling to then account for it. So that's when the investigation kicked in. And it's reckoned that 128,000 victims were fleeced in 3 years.
Yeah.
It's just mind-boggling. And again, you know, I kind of think back to what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
In moments of financial insecurity or when pressures are tight, people might take that 5, 10 or 20 or £50 or £1,000 and invest it because they think that will return. And you have unscrupulous individuals like this who really profit in periods of challenge.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It shows desperation, right? Those 128,000 people were probably taking a risk with some money or with some crypto. I don't know about you. Lots of people I speak to are still slightly like, goodness, crypto, what does that even mean? But it just shows us we've got to be very careful on the internet. We've got to be very careful, but also if it's too good to be true, it probably is. But it does show, I think, lots of people who are desperate to be able to move out of struggling situations and grabbing onto something that they hope will be that little, you know, glimmer of hope to get them out of a difficult situation. But Also just shows you, goodness, crypto, you've got to be incredibly careful out there on the internet.
The mind boggles of crypto and kind of meme coins that have no inherent value other than they're just fun. But then it also shows the kind of the throwaway society that we live in as well, and kind of just how not necessarily the algorithm always works for the betterment of society.
Yeah, it's true. Very true.
Let's talk about front page of the Eye if we can.
Yes, the Eye is leading on the WASPI women. So you'll remember back, we've had a change in Secretary of State since then, but Liz Kendall, I think, had kind of put to bed that there wasn't going to be compensation for the WASPI women. This is the women who, you know, had thought that they were going to be getting their pension at 60, and actually 65, 66 is what the pension age got pushed up to, and lots of kind of claims from them that they didn't have the information that they needed, or that they weren't informed, all of those sorts of things. This has been opened up again by Pat McFadden, who's come in as the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, saying that he's going to look at it again. He's going to do a retake, not necessarily meaning there'll be financial compensation for these women, but looking at it again, which I think has given hope that these pensioners, people who, again, you know, we talk a lot about people in work, people who are struggling to put food on the table as working people with young children. This is at the other end of the scale, pensioners, people who I think thought they were going into an old age with a certain pension pot, also really struggling. Another indication, I guess, of the pressures we've got on the Treasury, because if they reopen this and look at it again, it's £1 billion worth of compensation that we're looking at. So some women who really clearly feel there is a fight and a pressure they need to have a pension that they can survive on.
Understandably so. And once again, it raises the issue of the challenges that women have faced in the workplace for far too long. And I almost swore then for a second. I kind of nipped that in the bud. But it should be addressed, surely.
Surely it should. And do you know what? I think this all the time. I've got 2 small children, a 6- and 8-year-old, and I've been really fortunate that I've got a partner, and between us, we're able to manage the childcare costs of having small children and all of those other pressures. For lots of women, they don't have that option, and they're not in the workplace because they are raising their children or doing other caring responsibilities. And goodness me, there are ginormous pressures on working women who are really trying to make ends meet. And then the last thing they need at the same time as that is, all these challenges around when they thought they were going to get their pension and didn't. So lots of evidence feeding into this review. It'll be really interesting to see which side they come, because, as I said, it's another stack of billions that we're looking at if they do look at this again, against all those other pressures we've just been hearing about.
That calculator will be running red hot in number 11 at the moment. We're going to get on to a brighter story in a second, but before that, a pretty miserable one. In The Guardian, page 13, MPs call for the release of 15 penguins trapped.
Yeah, this one just caught my eye, actually, because I hadn't seen it before as I was looking through the papers today. There's 15 penguins trapped in the London Aquarium, apparently in a small enclosure without sunlight or fresh air, and they've been in there for many years, apparently. Now 14 years, apparently, and there's a group of MPs coming together. 75 MPs have come together calling for the release of these penguins who have been inside this enclosure. I guess it's just one of those ones where you just think, goodness, there's so many different things happening in the world at the moment. And here we have a group of penguins who have got, MPs fighting for their release. So, I guess just really caught my eye that there's lots of different things capturing MPs' attention at the moment, including penguins trapped in the London Aquarium.
For their part, Merlin Entertainments, the company that kind of is behind the aquarium, say, well, look, Penguin Point, as it's called, is located, yes, on the ground floor, but was carefully designed to reflect important elements of the natural environments to ensure good health and climate-controlled temperatures and filter fresh air. And I'm sure that they are being well looked after, but when public sentiment on animals starts shifting, you look at what happened after the Sea Life documentary, and how SeaWorld then kind of went and Seaspiracy as well, the documentary about kind of fishing, etc. Once public viewpoints change on animals, it's quite often hard to kind of push back against that.
It is, and actually it links into another story we're going to come on to, but also around just the big environmental pressures and crises they're trying to highlight, I think, through some of these enclosures, and the pressures of the environment, of the waste, of the throwaway society you referenced earlier when we were talking about bitcoins, and we'll come on to talk about. It's, big environmental pressures that the world is facing that are having massive impacts on these animal environments.
There's a really troubling story out of Canada at the moment as well. 15 or so beluga whales that are at risk of being euthanised because they can't relocate them, and there's challenges there, and they're putting pressure on the federal government to see if they'll kind of cover the cost of looking after those guys. Talking about... This is a great picture. It's a great picture in The Sun, page 2. Binspiring.
Do you know why I picked this one to
Go on.
talk about? Is because, you know, we were just referencing the fact that a third of the food we produce globally is thrown away. You know, if you think about that, it's a mad thing. And you just referenced when you'd been to Yorkshire, to the Fair Share site there, the quality and the quantity of the food. This is an amazing installation of thousands and thousands and thousands of bin liners. Have a look at the story if you get a chance, of an installation just showcasing and displaying the consumerism and waste in society. We also run something called Felix's Multi-Bank, actually, which rescues non-food items and redistributes them to families. And it's really hit home to me. Bedding, toiletries, towels, you know, kettles, all these sorts of things. For example, if you're a hotel chain and you're renovating all of the hotels, all of those things get thrown away. And what we're trying to do is rescue all those things, whether it's food or non-food items, and get them to people who really need them. And I actually thought this installation really brought it home. We have a real problem in this country and globally around consumerism and a throwaway society. And we've got to address it. We've got to think differently about how we repurpose and reuse those items and how we rescue things that are going to get thrown away that are perfectly good and get them to people who really need them.
We just bought some dining chairs that came from someone who had moved back from Australia. She was an American now living in London. She didn't have the space for them, so we bought them. But actually, she had recovered them from a Melbourne wine store.
Yeah.
And, like, that's more fun. The story's more fun sometimes than just, oh, I just went to the store and bought them.
It is. It's more fun, but also, goodness me, think about all the landfill. Yeah. Think about all of these things that keep getting thrown away. And again, at a time, we're just hearing with all these stories, so many people are struggling to buy chairs. Goodness me, shouldn't we be repurposing them? And I thought that this installation and this art installation actually really brought it to life. If we're not careful, we are filling the world with things that it's not necessarily rubbish. We could be using it for much better things.
Well, on that thought, those 50 minutes have flown. Charlotte,
Yep.
good to have you with us. I really appreciate you joining us. Plenty more of the day's stories and all the latest headlines on Mornings with Ridge and Frost. Plenty more as well on the Sky News Facebook page, app and website too. Get it all online. Stick with us after this short break.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, good morning from me as well.
The Prime Minister readies for a leadership battle amid claims of an imminent bid to oust him.
Donald Trump says he has an obligation to sue the BBC as he threatens a $1 billion lawsuit over speech edits.
You are saying to our viewers that you will go forward and file a defamation lawsuit against the BBC.
Well, I think I have an obligation to do it because you can't allow people to do that.
Protesters carrying signs saying our forests are not for sale break into the COP30 summit venue in Brazil.
Also today, are magic mushrooms the cure to alcoholism? New research suggests it could be a solution. We'll talk about it later in the programme.
And it's described as the deadliest and most dangerous people smuggling path to Europe. We've got a special report from our Alex Crawford, who's been on the boats intercepting migrants in the Mediterranean.
A lot of desperation and urging us. They think we've got something to do with it, and they're urging us to take them to Europe.
Good morning, welcome to the show. You join us on a morning when Westminster is in overdrive about Keir Starmer's future. Allies of the Prime Minister are briefing journalists that if there's a leadership challenge after the budget, he's prepared to fight it, which just shows how worried they are about what's going to happen in 2 weeks' time.
One name that's been mentioned as a potential challenger is the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. He'll be on this programme in the next few minutes. So what's actually going on? Is there really a plot to get the Prime Minister out in a couple of weeks' time, or is this just a sign of paranoia and bunker mentality in number 10? Mari's joined us to answer all of those questions. This is extraordinary how this unfolded late last night, and Wes Streeting, who joins us imminently, is at the heart of it.
Yeah, he's in really the eye of the storm at this point. And number 10, briefing against him specifically, naming him specifically when they're talking about plotting, when they're talking about people wanting to get rid of the Prime Minister after the budget. And so there's a situation now where, as you said, Wes Streeting's had to publicly deny this and say he's focused on his job. But also, the PM's allies are trying to say, hold on a second, if there is a leadership challenge, number one, it's going to spook the markets. Number two, it's going to damage the Labour Party brand. And number three, it's going to create chaos, which is something that we actually criticise the Conservatives for. Now, speaking to senior government sources, let me just read you what one of them said to me. Number 10 has gone into full bunker mode, turning on their most loyal cabinet members for absolutely no reason. Unfortunately, there is a pattern of Keir's team briefing against his own people. They did it to Angela Rayner, they did it to Lisa Nandy, they did it to Lucy Powell, now the deputy leader, and now it's Wes's turn. A circular firing squad won't help the government out of the hole that we're in. Now, I've spoken to several Labour MPs this morning. They tell me they think this is nonsense. They say they actually don't think that anybody is united around a particular person to actually oust the PM. So they say, to an extent, that is the thing that is keeping the PM safe, is the fact that the party hasn't actually decided who they would want in instead of him. And so we have a situation now where Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, is being attacked, really, off the record by number 10 at a time when they're supposed to be showing a united front ahead of the budget.
Mari, what a setup. No one could have done it better for what's next.
Yeah, because next up, we are going to be talking to the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. And I have to say, when I was preparing the interview yesterday, I'll be honest, I was not expecting to ask him about if he's planning to try and oust the Prime Minister in 2 weeks. But overnight, there has been this extraordinary briefing operation by allies of the PM telling journalists that if there's a leadership challenge after the budget, Keir Starmer will fight it. They've even talked directly, as Mari was saying, about Wes Streeting. So what on earth is going on? Is there a fully formed coup? Is this a paranoid number 10? Either way, before we start to Wes Streeting, I just want to make the point that this is a story that's been launched into the media deliberately by allies of Keir Starmer. Make of that what you will. Right, we can talk to the man at the kind of eye of this, Wes Streeting.
Good morning. Really pleased to be on your new show this morning.
How are you feeling?
Absolutely fine. I mean, obviously, I'm looking forward to all the questions you're now going to ask me about how we're reinvesting billions of pounds, say, from cutting layers of management and bureaucracy in the NHS to the front line so we can cut waiting lists.
Yeah, you got it out there, well done.
I'm sure we're going to get all of those questions right about now.
We will get some of those questions in, I promise. But look, you know, you'll forgive me for asking about the rumours of a coup. So what is going on? The allies of the PM saying that if there's a leadership challenge after the budget, the PM will fight it. So what, is there a leadership challenge? What's happening?
No, and I think whoever's been briefing this has been watching too much Celebrity Traitors, and this is just about the worst attack on a faithful I've seen since Joe Marler was kicked out and banished in the final. It's totally self-defeating briefing, not least because it's not true. And I don't understand how anyone thinks it's helpful to the Prime Minister either to suggest he's fighting for his job at a time when... Last time I saw him on Monday evening to talk about violence against women and girls and how we tackle it, he's fighting for the country and trying to turn it around from the absolute mess that we inherited.
So what's your message then to people who have been briefing this? What would you say to them?
Well, firstly, I'd like to commend them for at least taking on board the feedback about sexist briefings, because we've seen this before. Lucy Powell, Bridget Phillipson, Angela Rayner could go around pretty much the entire cabinet table. So at least they're picking on one of the boys now. But in all seriousness, it doesn't help anyone. It's not true. And I think my frustration actually about the first, almost 18 months we've been in government, there is a good story to tell about the change we're delivering, the promises we're keeping, the difference we're making. But would your viewers this morning know that we promised 2 million more appointments in the NHS and delivered 5 million? I'm not sure they would. Would they know that we delivered 2,500 more GPs in our first year, not 1,000? I am not sure they would. But the serious point is, yes, I'm deliberately trying to make sure that people do actually get to hear the message of what we're doing. But the point is, these sorts of Westminster bubble process stories, boys getting carried away, these are things that distract from our ability to get across the message of the change we're making, the difference we're making on things that voters actually care about.
There's a few specific allegations about you that have been put out in the last 24 hours. I want to put them to you directly. Firstly, there's the Times. Downing Street figures suspect that Streeting could demand the Prime Minister's resignation in the days after the budget. Are you going to rule that out?
Yes, and nor did I shoot JFK. I don't know where Lord Lucan is. Had nothing to do with Shergar. And I do think that the US did manage to do the moon landings. I don't think they were faked, certainly not by me.
What about after the local elections next year? Is that a point when, if you do badly, if you lose in Wales, that it could be time for a change at the top?
Well, I'm not planning for us to do badly. In Scotland, we've got a dynamic leader.
Can you rule it out? Can you rule it out demanding the Prime Minister's resignation?
I'm not going in to demand the Prime Minister's resignation. I support the Prime Minister. I have done since he was elected leader of the Labour Party. I didn't vote for him in the leadership election, but I did support him from the moment he was elected, and I supported him all the way through at points when he did things that no one thought was possible. They didn't think he could turn around the Labour Party. He did. They didn't think he could win a general election. He did. People are now questioning whether he can change the country. He will.
Can I tell you what I think? I think that this was all briefed overnight, specifically so that you could say those things today on the morning round, right? Everyone knows that you're doing the morning round, you're taking questions from people like me. They're worried about the budget, they know how bad it's going to be, but they know that in all likelihood it looks like the manifesto is going to be broken. They want a public declaration of loyalty from the person who is seen as the most likely person to succeed the Prime Minister.
Well, I suppose the tragedy is everything I've just said about Keir's record, about confounding his critics, are things that I have said regularly and repeatedly whenever I've been asked questions about how he's doing or how the government's doing.
So you haven't had
the only thing that this has achieved is distracting me from talking about the fact that when the Prime Minister and I announced we were going to abolish NHS England, reduce the size of my department, the NHS, by 50%,
you will talk about
and cut through layers of management bureaucracy, lots of people said, well, this isn't going to happen. Today I'm setting out how we're going to do that. But, of course, we're going to spend most of the time, and I'm grateful you are actually going to come on to what I came on to talk about, but we will now spend more time on what is a totally irrelevant and untrue process story, but also a self-defeating one because it's come from Downing Street.
Have you had any conversations with anyone about getting rid of Keir Starmer?
No, and I tell you what I think this does show is that when Lucy Powell stood to be deputy leader of the Labour Party and said there needed to be a culture change in how we lead and how the party is managed, I think she has been vindicated.
Is it rotten? Do you think there's a rotten culture?
No, I wouldn't go that. No, and I'm not going to give whoever's behind this any more kind of oxygen and credit. I do think that going out and calling your Labour MPs feral is not very helpful. I do think that trying to kneecap one of your own team when they are out, not just making the case for the government, but actually delivering the change that we promised, I think that is also self-defeating and self-destructive behaviour. I also think whoever did this doesn't speak for the Prime Minister. I speak for the Prime Minister. That's why I was asked to come on this morning to talk about the reform agenda in the NHS. It's why I was with the Prime Minister on Monday evening with a small group of colleagues looking seriously at how we meet our ambitious goal of halving violence against women and girls in this country.
Those are
the things the Prime Minister's focused on. I think he will be horrified reading the front pages this morning. I don't think this is how he conducts himself, and I think people should follow the example set by their boss.
You just said there that you feel like they've tried to kneecap you. How do you feel? How does that make you feel?
Irritated, to be honest, because I want to talk about what we're actually doing in the NHS, but I wouldn't put it more strongly than that. I mean, the reason, I sort of laughed at the beginning, because I just think water off a duck's back. Okay. It's a totally irrelevant process story. I suspect it'll be forgotten by tomorrow. Most people, if they cotton on to this story, if they pay any attention to politics at all today, be scratching their head thinking, what's that about? As am I, and as am so many of my colleagues.
Part of the reason this has happened is because there's obviously a worry about what's happening in the budget, there's a worry about reform, who are breathing down your necks. Do you think there is a legitimate concern about the communication style, I guess, around the Prime Minister number 10, more authentic, less talking cliches, taking a few risks? I just want to read you a couple of, ex-posts from Keir Starmer's account, which I'm sure aren't written by him, by the way, but, here we go. I'll always stand for unity and national renewal. Another one, a Britain built for all. And then another one, we're choosing renewal over decline, unity over division, unlocking the potential of everyone in every part of the UK. I mean, it sounds like it was written by an AI bot.
Well, look, my approach, and I think Keir's approach, I think what the government needs to be doing is kind of the Ron Seal approach. Do what you say on the tin. We said we'd cut NHS waiting lists. They are lower now than when we came to office. Are they still too high? Is there more to do? Of course. A lot done, a lot more to do. We said we'd deliver 2 million more appointments in our first year. That was our first step. We actually delivered 5 million. So not only are we keeping promises on health, we are actually exceeding the expectations that we set for ourselves and the country expected of us. So there are plenty of good things to say about this government. And obviously I talk about health. I'm the health secretary. If Bridget Phillipson was sat here this morning, she'd be talking about the difference that breakfast clubs are making to kids across the country. So they start the day with hungry minds instead of hungry bellies. She'd be talking about the 100,000 children that are going to be lifted out of poverty because of her free school meals policy. If Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, was sat here, she'd be talking about the improvements to railways and buses, bringing them into public ownership. There's a good story to tell about this
Let's talk about
government.
the good story that you want to tell today, which is about NHS bureaucracy, right? Because we said we'd talk about it, and I want to honour it. What are you doing?
So the Prime Minister and I said we would abolish NHS England, the biggest quango in the world, that we would reduce the size of what would be a new Department of Health and Social Care by half of what the two organisations are today, and that we would also halve the size of integrated care boards, so that we can reduce the layers of bureaucracy in the NHS, which everyone complains about, from patients to frontline staff. When we made that promise, I think there was a bit of a sharp intake of breath. There were lots of people saying, are you actually going to be able to do it? And today, in a speech to NHS leaders, I'm setting out how we're going to do that. So within the next 2 years, NHS England will have been completely abolished. And over the course of the next 3 years, we will have halved those organisations. The work to reduce the size of ICBs, my department in NHS England is beginning immediately with a voluntary redundancy programme. And that will enable us to reinvest at least £1 billion a year into frontline services. And so I think the reassurance there, and you mentioned the budget, and the Chancellor does have a really difficult job, and she is having to weigh up some choices that she knows will be unpopular, but she thinks they're right. And it's my responsibility to make sure that as well as that extra £26 billion that's going into the NHS, we're also spending every single penny that's already there. Because I know that taxpayers are having to make sacrifices. I know that people are paying a lot and have been paying a high price for Conservative failure. It's our job now to turn it around. And with the NHS, our investment and modernisation is finally getting the NHS on the road to recovery. There are green shoots, a lot done, lots more to do, and I'd accept there's lots to go at, and there are still lots of things that aren't right about the NHS, but we're getting there. It's on the road to recovery.
So your message is, if the Chancellor breaks the manifesto and puts up some of those big taxes in the budget, it is worth it because of that investment in the NHS.
I'm not going to speculate on what is in the budget. I do think that the promises we make are important. I do think keeping promises are important. I think people know the Chancellor has got an extremely difficult set of choices and circumstances to manage, and she takes promises very, very seriously. And if she's deviating from anything that she's said before, the government said before, she doesn't do those things lightly, and she'll set out why she's making choices at the budget, and no doubt with the full support of the Labour Party behind her.
OK, Wes Streeting, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wes Streeting there, the Health Secretary. Pretty strong reaction, I think it's probably fair to say, to the briefing that we've seen
I think
overnight.
A couple of great headlines from that. I mean, the first, we kind of knew this coming in, but it was a Westminster insider thing of where this all emanated from. He confirmed it came from Downing Street, not from the Prime Minister, who explicitly didn't think it was the Prime Minister, but people working for the Prime Minister. Having that on the record, I think, is pretty significant. The other thing that whoever that started with, if they were trying to do it to kneecap him, I think it was his phrase, not sure it worked. He just smashed it out of the park. He delivered all the messages that he should if there was unity, and probably people watching it thinking, why can't more senior cabinet members be as good a communicator as that? Let's bring in Sam Coates, who's watching. Sam, what was your main takeaway?
This is a very perilous moment for Keir Starmer. Fascinating to watch how Wes Streeting, who is the target of these attacks, deal with it. Look, he came on trying to make a joke of it. He pre-prepared some light-hearted remarks about how he, believed that he believed that the moon landings. He didn't believe the moon landings were fake. But you could see the irritation get to him pretty quickly. So what's going on here? As you say, the most important line from Wes Streeting was that he said he blamed Downing Street for the briefings against him. So what's been said? It's two things, and we've been hearing this from Number 10 Allies for the better part of a week, actually. I first heard this line of attack against Wes Streeting last Thursday. And what Number 10 Allies, what allies of Keir Starmer have been saying quite widely now for several days, is that they are worried that after the budget, Wes Streeting was going to come to the Prime Minister with a phalanx of unhappy ministers and say, your time's up, you've got to stand down. And when I heard that, I felt like, A, this was a paranoid Number 10 trying to get ahead of a story for which they quite explicitly weren't providing any evidence. But B, this was just a reflection of their insecurity. But in doing so, Sophie and Wilf, they have advertised Keir Starmer's weakness. There is a real danger that a coordinated attempt 24 hours ago to shore up the Prime Minister, to make him look strong, ends up increasing the sense of crisis in the government and advertising that behind closed doors at Whitehall, they worry that he is weaker than the public even realise. Wes Streeting trying to fight all of that, but not holding back, calling for a culture change, saying that Lucy Powell was right, the Labour deputy leader, when she said that, and also saying, and I thought this was pretty noteworthy as well, it's important that we keep promises as politicians. Just a couple of weeks before we know Rachel Reeves is all but certain to break them, and break them on tax. So a perilous moment. Wes Streeting in a difficult position because he knows that the briefings are genuine. He says they come from Downing Street. It's hard to be Health Secretary if people around the Prime Minister just don't trust you.
I mean, fascinating analysis, Sam, and totally agree with you that point at the end, although he kind of came back to say the Labour Party will be behind the Chancellor, but saying we should keep our promises. It was sort of echoing Lucy Powell kind of rhetoric. Sophie, what did you make of his very energetic? And, Sam, I don't know what your point was on those jokes and things. I thought that worked quite well, actually. Yeah. I thought it was quite a clever way of saying this is as crazy a conspiracy theory as that exists.
I think I would agree with what Sam was saying, that, look, he went in with the kind of clever rebuttal, the water off a duck's back, the traitors reference, the, moon landing stuff. But beneath that, it feels to me like a kind of cabinet and a number 10 operation that are effectively at war. I mean, he was saying there that they tried to kneecap him. He was talking about, he gave a list of a raft of cabinet ministers who had been briefed against, from Angela Rayner to Lucy Powell to Bridget Phillipson. And so this, I think what actually did happen, even although he's clearly trying to show that unity is fine, he's OK with Keir Starmer, it's all a load of rubbish. What it really did reveal, and I don't want to know what you think, Sam, on this, is that beneath the surface, it's all go. It's not OK.
Well, on that note, Sam, I guess the next question for me is, this is clearly a poisonous clash at the moment. Does it mean one of two people have to leave their jobs? So, whoever started this briefing in Downing Street or the health secretary, or is that getting ahead of ourselves?
To take both of your questions in turn, look, there is a real sense of crisis now, I think, in the Labour Party, and that is a sense of crisis put on the agenda by people in Downing Street. I mean, just saying that sentence is incredible. And you talked, Sophie, and you asked about the reaction. People across the Labour Party have their head in their hands at the moment because, as Wes Streeting says, it's a process story. Sure, it's a process story about the process of maybe getting rid of the Prime Minister, but it is not talking about health and education and anything that will see Labour rise in the polls. And the danger is not that there's some kind of coup or challenge in 2 or 3 weeks in the moments before Christmas after the budget, but there is a concern, and this is deep-seated, and you really struggle to find anybody who doesn't think this. There is a deep-seated worry that Keir Starmer just cannot and doesn't have the political skills to turn things around, and there'll be another electoral test in May, and as many suspect he fails that, then where are they left? This is a crisis. This is the sort of pitch trolling for a mega crisis. I think the worst thing that can happen for Keir Starmer now is what, in effect, he has started, his allies have started in earnest this morning, which is to talk about his own survival and put that on the agenda. They need to get off that and onto the sorts of things that Wes Streeting was talking about. Look, there's one massive question that I want to put to you both for the whole of the rest of today and everybody watching. Wes Streeting was very clear that the Prime Minister personally was not to blame or did not know about these briefings. I put it to both of you, we do not know that. That will be the subject that's raised at Prime Minister's questions, I've got no doubt, at midday today. But is it really possible that the Prime Minister can see a coordinated briefing involving, as my understanding, multiple of his allies, and he had absolutely no idea it was going on? Because if that was the case, he should be firing people, many in the Labour Party think, wholesale around him. And if that wasn't the case, and he did know, then how can Wes Streeting remain in his cabinet? Because he clearly thinks Wes Streeting isn't focused on the health job, but focused on his own future. These are massive questions that will be put at speed and at volume to the Prime Minister today and every day. Does he know what's going on around him? And if he doesn't he need to change the people around him? And if he does, well, quite frankly, how can he have a cabinet that he doesn't trust?
And when is the budget again? Just a couple of weeks?
2 weeks. Oh, blimey.
2 weeks tomorrow.
Sam, thank you very much indeed.
Great to have Sam with us. And, of course, make sure you do subscribe to Politics at Sam and Anne's every day. Great content like that every morning. Now, Donald Trump has spoken for the first time about his threat to sue the BBC for $1 billion, saying he's got an obligation to do so.
The White House says it will bring legal action against the BBC over the editing of Trump's January the 6th speech in a Panorama documentary last year. He was talking to Fox News.
Are you going ahead and suing the BBC?
Well, I guess I have to. Why not? Because they defrauded the public, and they've admitted it, and their top echelon.
Director General and the CEO
This
both
is
resigned.
within one of our great allies. This is supposedly our great ally, BBC. The government has a chunk of that one, I guess. But that's a pretty sad event. They actually changed my January 6th speech, which was a beautiful speech, which was a very calming speech, and they made it sound radical. And they actually changed it. What they did was rather incredible. They're showing me the results later on, the results of what they did, how they butchered it up. but it was very dishonest.
Tonight, you are saying to our viewers that you will go forward and file a defamation lawsuit against the BBC.
Well, I think I have an obligation to do it because you can't allow people to do that. I couldn't allow 60 Minutes. You know, we settled that one for many millions of dollars, and I couldn't have allowed that to take place.
And Sadie is here to chat a bit more about this. 60 Minutes, by the way, at the end, he's referencing is a show on CBS, and he successfully sued them under defamation law, got, I think, $15 or $16 million. So it's an interesting way to end that clip. We were discussing this yesterday. Would he sort of settle for an apology and put the lawsuit aside? Not based on that.
No, I think what we see is if anyone was thinking that he was going to back down after the resignations over the weekend, that's not going to happen. He's spoken about it. His lawyers have sent a letter to the BBC. He's now going on Fox News talking more about it. And he describes this. You can see how much it hurts him. He says the BBC was a supposed ally of his and he feels really betrayed by this. He says what they did was really dishonest. And I think that word obligation that he uses just gives you an idea of his mentality in all of this. He sees this as something he has to do. He really believes in lawsuits. And by the way, Donald Trump doesn't have a good track record when it comes to taking media companies to court. And that CBS one he mentions, he went after 10 billion from them. He settled for 16 million. So you can just see that all of this big talk, by the way, his lawyers are currently, they're going after a $10 billion lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, 15 billion against the New York Times. I don't think anyone thinks he's going to get any of that money, but certainly it is an indication of just how strong his will is to fight the BBC on this.
Ironically as well, by the way, if he's suing the Wall Street Journal, that's got the same owner as the interview he was just giving to Fox News, which shows how it is quite a scattergunner approach. And I guess the BBC is the sort of flavour of the month as opposed to necessarily something he will pursue to the very end. We shall see. Sadie, great stuff. Thank you very much.
Now, if you're going out for the day, don't forget you can take us with you. I'm not sure if that's a great, maybe you'll like that, maybe you won't, but hopefully you will.
Sell it.
It's with our podcast Cheat Sheet, which is 10 minutes. It's a news rundown. It's everything you need to know. Actually, to be honest, it's a great product done by our producers, I should say as well. If you scan the QR code on your screen now, you can listen to today's Cheat Sheet podcast in full.
And still to come, Alex Crawford will be joining us. She's here. Can't wait to have her on set. And we're going to be talking about this extraordinary new report she's done. She's been following the people smuggling routes, the most dangerous one that exists to get into Europe. Her report from Libya and her on set next.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. The news this morning. The Health Secretary has denied he's at the forefront of a plot to oust the Prime Minister. There are reports of a potential coup against Sir Keir Starmer, with his allies overnight insisting he's ready to fight off any challenge. Well, speaking to us this morning, Wes Streeting said those suggestions are self-defeating and don't help anyone.
These sorts of Westminster bubble process stories, boys getting carried away, these are things that distract from our ability to get across the message of the change we're making, the difference we're making on things that voters actually care
There's a
about.
few specific allegations about you that have been put out in the last 24 hours. I want to put them to you directly. Firstly, there's the Times. Downing Street figures suspect that Streeting could demand the Prime Minister's resignation in the days after the budget. Are you going to rule that out?
Yes, and nor did I shoot JFK. I don't know where Lord Lucan is. Had nothing to do with Shergar. And I do think that the US did manage to do the moon landings. I don't think they were fake.
Donald Trump has said he's got an obligation to sue the BBC over the editing of a speech he gave before the US Capitol riot on January the 6th, 2021. The president reiterated his threat to sue the corporation for $1 billion, saying they've defrauded the public.
You are saying to our viewers that you will go forward and file a defamation lawsuit against the BBC.
Well, I think I have an obligation to do it because you can't get people.
Dozens of protesters have clashed with security guards at the COP30 climate summit in Brazil. They were demanding more land rights and a greater say in protecting the Amazon rainforest.
Now, let's talk about migration. The journey from Libya to Europe is described as the deadliest and most dangerous migration path to Europe.
Migrants face forced and unpaid labour, kidnapping for ransom, trafficking and even rape on the weeks-long journey as they try to reach Greece.
The UN International Organization for Migration estimates that more than 2,200 people died or went missing in the Mediterranean attempting to reach Europe last year.
Well, Sky special correspondent Alex Crawford and her team were given exclusive access to an operation trying to stop migrants from reaching Europe. Here's a taste of her report.
We're with the forces fighting people smugglers in East Libya and watch them trying to smash the gangs. We witness the boatloads risking their lives on new sea routes to Europe and see those who fled war taken back to Libya. This is the centre of Europe's smuggling crisis, and we're travelling to the heart of it.
So now we're in Tobruk. It's meant to be a key transit point, a key launching area from where many migrants will connect with smugglers and go over to Europe.
This is one of the main smuggler junctions. The streets are crowded with those wanting to go to Europe. They're all waiting to cross the sea, we're told. The officers are overwhelmed, and many are set on going to Britain.
United Kingdom, wow, that's good. I hope I will be there soon, right?
The unusual access we've got to East Libya is to show us exactly this. The crowds ready to risk their lives on small boats, with many telling us they're escaping war in Sudan.
Well, delighted to say that Alex joins us now. A very good morning to you, Alex.
Morning.
Thanks for coming in. And should say as well, Alex's full report's available online already, and the QR code's going up on the screen now. The first thing that strikes me on this is some of the numbers we said. We all talk about our small boats issues, but they're dwarfed by what you witnessed from Libya.
I mean, I think we've got to be careful to put it into perspective. There has been a slight rise, but the numbers in Libya, and particularly East Libya, it's a junction point. It's like Clapham Junction in that area. You know, it is packed full of pretty desperate and vulnerable people who are either fleeing war or poverty and have already travelled quite a large distance across desert. I mean, one family, one group of people, I think it was about 28 of them who we found on one of the raids, had spent 20 days already trekking across deserts, going through Egypt, getting to Libya, and were now on the next stage of their journey, which was being smuggled again and trafficked again by boat, small boat, dinghies, which you probably think twice about using if you're on holiday, and absolutely packed full of people. And so each stage is dangerous, and they've switched to a new route now, as they've done these very heavily criticised deals, the EU, with West Libya. The smugglers and the migrants and the refugees have switched to East Libya, and the unrecognised government there and the authorities there.
I mean, we're just looking at some of those images on the screen now, and it is absolutely staggering to see the number of people and the space that they have on these tiny boats. I mean, what was it like, you know, spending time with them, talking to them? I mean, many of them, I guess, had tried to attempt these crossings before. What kind of thing are they witnessing and going through?
Well, the first thing to say is that it is heartrending, heartbreaking to actually be with them, see this packed dinghy full of people who have spent days on that dinghy. You know, one of the dinghies that came in, they'd spent 3 days. 3 days, and at this stage, they were just off the coast of Greece. The engine had packed out, they'd run out of fuel, and they'd radioed for help at this stage. And when we picked them up, the Coast Guard, the East Libyan Coast Guard picked them up, they were desperate and very weak, very thirsty, very hungry, but they still thought that they'd made it to Europe, because they saw myself and the crew, they thought we were European, and it only dawned on them sometime later that they were actually being taken back away from the European shores and back to Libya, which obviously is recognised as an unsafe and dangerous place anyway to return people to.
I was fascinated in that clip we played, Alex, that there was someone there who was specifically saying how much he was looking forward to come to the UK. Yeah. And it's just mad, actually, to me, to think how many thousands of miles they are away. And as you said, a lot of these people probably started from Central Africa, not even North Africa. Was that commonplace, that people's ultimate goal was to come as far as Northern Europe and UK specifically?
Very, very much commonplace. I mean, they were heading to Europe, not necessarily to Britain, but very much to Europe. They wanted to get to Europe because they saw Europe as a place of safety, as a place where they could eventually bring family members, and a place where they could earn a living. And many of them talked about wanting that. That's what they want. They want to be able to live in safety. A number of them spoke about horrendous conditions in their homeland. For instance, there were a large number of Sudanese people from Sudan and South Sudan talking about and showing scars of bullet wounds and talking of family members being killed or injured. And along the way, we found evidence, many people talking, particularly women, young women, some children, who spoke about being raped by the smugglers, by the traffickers. So pretty desperate conditions. And I think what struck us was that the problem is at the very end, by the time they get to Europe. The problem starts much, much earlier. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of questions from the humanitarian groups, Amnesty International, for instance, talking about the ethics of the European Union doing deals with these unorthodox authorities to pull them back and return them to war zones.
Alex, it's been fascinating to talk, and I'm glad to say we're going to have more from Alex throughout the programme as well. I've got an awful lot more questions I want to ask you about it, so looking forward to that.
And a reminder, scan that QR code, you can watch Alex's full report already. Now, yesterday, we brought you the story of a young woman in care who took her own life after several warning signs had been ignored. It's an issue that reaches across our public sector. How to stop children falling through the cracks when the state is their corporate parent.
Now, Samantha Morton is obviously a celebrated actress, but she also spent her own childhood in care. And she spoke to our People and Politics correspondent, Nick Martin, a warning that this does contain reference to self-harm and suicide.
Nobody intended to murder her or kill her, but due to their absolute abhorrent neglect and lack of care on duty, failing to do their jobs properly has massive consequences, especially when a young person has stated that they are going to kill themselves. Why she wasn't in a secure accommodation on suicide watch, I just don't know. Why she was dismissed from CAMS before she turned into an adult when they knew quite clearly that she was very vulnerable. This wasn't an accident. Nonita said, "I am going to kill myself. Please help me, please help me, please help me, please help me, please help me." And nobody helped her. But they were being paid to help her. Your money, my money, taxpayers' money. So those people, those individuals that didn't do their job properly, as far as I'm concerned, Nick, they need to be in a dock.
Space. And we wanted to explore this a bit more by bringing in Jules Brown, who's a family support worker, also spent 5 years in full-time care. It's great to have you with us. Jules, I just wanted to kind of explain partly why I was so keen to talk to you today. I did a report on prisons earlier this year where so many of the officers told me about the teenagers coming in who'd been in care. And you contacted me on social media and you basically called me out, quite rightly, it should be said, where you said, look, this is clearly a massive issue with care and prisons. Why aren't you talking more about this issue? Why aren't you talking to people who've experienced care to give the full picture of what's going on? And I've thought about that, honestly, quite a lot since you got in touch with me. So I just want to say I'm really glad to have you on today. And, I guess I don't know where to start, really, but I just wondered if you wanted to introduce yourself a little bit by telling your own story.
So yeah, I'm Jules. I grew up in care. I've been in the care system for 13 years, right up until my 25th birthday. Just taking Nonita's story into account really here, I think there's so many similarities in the care system and failures that are going wrong that I also experienced myself through local authorities not providing the basics of safeguards and care to young people, to communication errors and pathway planning, and planning on to moving on from care failures that occur every day in our country and with so many care leavers. Through my experience, I then wanted to go and work with children in care. And the one thing that I've seen myself is that these failures just haven't changed. We have heard so much in the commentary of the last day about how these failures have gone through decades worth of the care system and nothing has really changed. And I think the one thing we're all feeling today, as it's being highlighted more, is anger, despair, frustration, and a lot of emotion, genuinely. We're looking at 91 children dying a year in our care system. And that is such, to me, I can't fathom how that's happening. And I don't understand why the system hasn't changed significantly enough to protect the children that we place in local authority care from the dangers that they're exposed to.
Okay.
What, Jules, is your advice, whether it's to local authorities or central government? Are there, I guess there's no simple solutions, but are there obvious steps that need to be taken, that could be taken, that haven't been taken?
I think the obvious steps, firstly, is something that we see every day, even in my line of work, is that communication is not up to scratch and there's not enough responsibility at those who are leading these services. And there's a lot of cover-up, and what we need is transparency. We need honesty. We look at Nonita's case and nobody's wanted to answer the questions apart from Bridget Phillipson. And I think, to me, we need to be taking accountability and these people need to be held to account. So government needs to change that, but also they're changing things that are not having a real term effect. And we've not got the investment into the service to provide what young people need. We're thinking about 1/3 of young people leaving care becoming homeless. We're thinking about 25% of the prison population having care experience. And we're asking all these questions as to why. And it's because there's not the hope when it comes to housing, education, and your proper chances in life. We're not giving young people hope. We're not letting them feel like they're cared for, that they're part of society. Instead, they tend to be quite ostracized from society and the political conversation. And what we do is we put a plaster on with saying, like, housing, we're going to remove the local connection. That doesn't matter because we know we've got a housing crisis in the UK anyway. So how is that going to solve that problem?
You're so eloquent when you listen to you. You obviously thought a lot about these issues, and you've made such a success of your life. But reading your story, you were in the care system for 13 years. You were saying, it could have been different, couldn't it? Because you've battled your own demons at points, like so many other children who were going through the similar things. How bad was it? Yeah.
I was going to say, I think a challenge that we all face is trying to strive in life and trying to make something of ourselves when we're held back so much by the system. One thing I want to say is that the workers on the ground, as I explain it, or try and give us the best that they can with a system that is restricted by the restraints of a broken system. It is completely broken in every way, shape or form. I look at where I've got to, and I think a little bit is trying to defy the odds in life. I was, I could have been, unfortunately, so many other statistics that we are just a statistic in many ways. I could have been homeless. In fact, I have been homeless. I have used drugs and I have done loads of different things, but I've been able to navigate that in some really difficult ways. And the one thing I would say to any care experienced young person right now is that this system, as much as it is a fundamental part of your life, isn't going to be there forever, but it will leave its mark. And you can use that in any way possible to try and propel yourself to where you want to be, because the sky is the limit. And I'm kind of sometimes tired of the narrative within social care that you're restricted because there isn't this investment. You're not going to get there because of this trauma and things like that. But actually, that's not the case. And they achieve some amazing things every day, children in care. And sometimes the narrative is quite negative. There's quite a stigma. And the societal change is right, but also the political stance on it has to change.
It's a great message. Thank you very much for coming on the programme. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you've been affected by that issue, you can contact the Samaritans, 116 123 or joe@samaritans.org.
Coming up in just a few moments, a professor tells how one Class A illegal drug could help treat alcoholism.
You skipped the name of that drug, which I would have done too, because I have no idea how to pronounce it. We'll practice in the break.
Turkey is burying its dead.
Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
Eastern Libya is the new doorway to Europe for people being smuggled from Africa and Asia.
We are close to Greece. You can see it.
We've obtained unprecedented access to the authorities.
Do you feel you're just scratching the surface?
We've been on the raids, out with the Coast Guard,
That's so desperate.
and inside the detention centres.
How did you cope with that?
To find what's pushing people to Europe and what's driving the authorities here to stop them.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back. The drug psilocin, more commonly known as magic mushrooms, have often been touted as having several potential therapeutic qualities. Treatment for depression and anxiety, addiction treatment, and even anti-aging.
Now, new research suggests a treatment of alcoholism could also be added to the list. But of course, researching such a controversial substance is pretty difficult.
Psilocin is a Class A drug. It's illegal in the UK. Penalties range from 7 years in prison for possession to life in prison for supplying and producing it.
And last year, the government's Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs said that this classification is a significant barrier to studying the therapeutic benefits.
The government agreed in principle to pilot an approach that would allow clinical trials without the need of a domestic controlled drug licence. Well, joining us now, Joanna Neal. She's Professor of Psychopharmacology at Manchester University and Chair of the Medical Psychedelics Working Group for Drug Science. Thanks so much for joining us, Professor. Can I just start more broadly? Magic mushrooms is a term people have heard of. Psychedelics is perhaps more broadly a term that's used as well. What exactly are they, and what do they do to us if we take them?
OK, so they are, let's say they are enormously significant development in the treatment of very, very hard to treat conditions. So they're plant medicines. Psychedelic mushrooms grow in the UK. They grow all over the world. Many of the psychedelics that people are using in trials actually grow naturally in nature, so they are plant medicines. Of course, there are synthetic versions like LSD, which was synthesized by Albert Hofmann in 1938. So actually, we have a psychedelic renaissance now. The need is absolutely huge for new approaches to mental health treatment. And actually, talking about the alcoholism, Hofmann makes LSD in 1938, and he knows that this is very significant. He's working for Sandoz, big pharmaceutical company, and they distribute to psychiatrists and psychologists. And there is a lot of work done on substance use disorders, in particular alcoholism. And there were 6 large randomized controlled trials, placebo-controlled, that were published before 1970. And Humphrey Osmond treated 4,000 people with alcohol use disorder with LSD, and he got a 40% abstinence rate. Alcoholics Anonymous is 7.5. So as you said, this is a hugely significant treatment for very hard to treat conditions like treatment-resistant depression.
Can I just ask you about the kind of risks of magic mushrooms in particular? Because people watching this will be like, this sounds absolutely great, what's not to love, why are they illegal? But there are, of course, dangers and risks involved as well.
Of course there are. But I would say in the clinical trials where people have been very closely supervised and they're taking a high dose, there have been no significant adverse events, and probably over 2,000 people have been treated in clinical trials. In the psychedelic renaissance. Of course, they induce a very intense psychological experience that some people
are going to have bad trips as well, right?
Absolutely,
and people experiences.
Absolutely, and people tend to have bad trips when they're not supervised carefully, when they haven't prepared carefully for the experience. So in the trials, and actually in retreat settings, and Indigenous people, don't forget, have been using these as as medicines for spiritual healing for thousands of years, you would prepare for at least a month. You would go on a special diet. You would, be very careful in the behaviors that you engage in. Then you are very closely supervised in the experience, and this will be, say, one high dose. And then you will have a lot of integration because you have a lot of brain changes following this experience. And that is what leads to the healing.
And can I ask, Professor, because I can really understand if it really changes the dial, moves the dial, if it's treating mental health or something like that. But to treat alcoholism, on the surface, it kind of feels like trying to cheat sports gambling by sending someone to the casino instead. I mean, is it one and done? You take it, you get off the addiction of alcohol, or are you replacing it with a sort of another slightly addictive substance?
No, absolutely not. It is one and done. In all these trials, it's 1 or 2 high doses. They take people out to at least a year, and they find that they are no longer drinking. And people get significant insight into their problems when, because of the psychedelic experience. And they feel like they've been given a new lease of life, and they have a strong resolution then to discontinue their drinking. So this is a complete paradigm shift. So the 4 things I tell people about psychedelic medicine: they heal people. So one and done, couple of high doses. And we don't heal people in psychiatry. We prescribe a medicine that people have to take every day. Therefore, they have a large side effect burden. I've met people who've been on antidepressant medication for 30 years. So this is something that enables people to lead their best lives. And it is kind of a one and done. It is a couple of high doses, as we said, but that's it. The effects are incredibly long-lasting, and the neuroplasticity that psychedelics give you enable people to change how they manage their lives. And they have this enormous capacity being given to them. I mean, people talk about this as the most significant experience of their lives.
Professor,
really interesting stuff.
Professor, thanks so much for joining us. So we're out of time, but we really appreciate the very interesting conversation, Professor Joanna Neal. Well, not much time left of the programme. I'm excited to get back to the top story of the day, which is more reaction to, I guess Wes Streeting tried to say it's a bit of a Westminster bubble story. I'm not sure that it is just that when you're talking about potential attempts to unseat the Prime Minister.
You absolutely can't put it that way, and I'm sure there's going to be an awful lot more reaction to that coming up. Has Wes Streeting put out the fires? Are more fires still about to be lit?
We shall see. More to come on the other side of this short break. Don't go anywhere. Ridge and Frost back in a couple of minutes.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning, it is 8 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well. Well, a big political story developing this morning.
The Health Secretary rules out launching a plot to oust Keir Starmer as Downing Street readies for a leadership challenge.
These sorts of Westminster bubble process stories, boys getting carried away, these are things that distract.
Donald Trump says he's got an obligation to sue the BBC as he threatens a $1 billion lawsuit over speech edits.
You are saying to our viewers that you will go forward and file a defamation lawsuit against the BBC.
Well, I think I have an obligation to do it because you can't allow people to do that.
Protesters carrying signs saying our forests are not for sale break into the COP30 summit venue in Brazil.
Also today, are magic mushrooms the cure to alcoholism? New research suggests that could be a solution.
And it's been described as the deadliest and most dangerous people smuggling path to Europe. We've got a special report from Alex Crawford. He's been on the boats intercepting migrants in the Mediterranean.
A lot of desperation and urging us. They think we've got something to do with it. They're urging us to take them to Europe.
A very good morning to you and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost. You join us on a morning when Westminster's in overdrive about Keir Starmer's future. Allies of the Prime Minister have been briefing journalists overnight that if there's a leadership challenge after the budget, he's prepared to fight it, which shows just how worried he is about what's going to happen in a couple of weeks.
So what's going on? Is there really a plot to get rid of the PM in a couple of weeks, or is this a sign of paranoia and a bunker mentality in number 10? One name that has been mentioned as linked to the coup is the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, who came out on this programme with some pretty clear denials about having talks about getting rid of the Prime Minister. And he also accused those in number 10 of trying to kneecap him. I asked him if there was a rotten culture in the Labour Party.
I'm not going to give whoever's behind this any more kind of oxygen and credit. I do think that, going out and calling your Labour MPs feral is not very helpful. I do think that trying to kneecap one of your own team when they are out, not just making the case for the government, but actually delivering the change that we promised, I think that is also self-defeating and self-destructive behaviour. I also think whoever did this doesn't speak for the Prime Minister. I speak for the Prime Minister.
Sophie also asked him what message he had for those that he saw as briefing against him.
I'd like to commend them for at least taking on board the feedback about sexist briefings, because we've seen this before. Lucy Powell, Bridget Phillipson, Angela Rayner could go around pretty much the entire cabinet table. So at least they're picking on one of the boys now. But in all seriousness, it doesn't help anyone. It's not true.
Look, the key part of this really, of course, is whether or not it is true. Whether it is true that Wes Streeting and others are actively plotting against the Prime Minister. And so I wanted to ask him that directly. This is what he said. There's a few specific allegations about you that have been put out in the last 24 hours. I want to put them to you directly. Firstly, there's the Times. Downing Street figures suspect that Streeting could demand the Prime Minister's resignation in the days after the budget. Are you going to rule that out?
Yes, and nor did I shoot JFK. I don't know where Lord Lucan is. Had nothing to do with Shergar. And I do think that the US did manage to do the moon landings. I don't think they were fake.
I'll just say it again. I was laughing as he was saying that. I thought that was a very clever comeback. Mari, the other clip, Mari's joined us, as you can see. The other clip that I think really stood out, I'm not sure if we played it there, but he said explicitly that the source of the briefings was coming from number 10. Obviously, he said as well he didn't think it was coming from the Prime Minister himself. But that was a hugely significant confirmation of something, I guess, that us overnight with various briefings were starting to assume, but he confirmed it.
Yeah, he confirmed it. And to be honest, it felt to me in that interview that he was a little bit almost taken aback, perhaps slightly disappointed in the fact that he feels he's been incredibly loyal and doesn't feel that he deserves this. Now, the difficulty is you speak to different people in the Labour Party and everybody has a different view on this kind of chaotic briefing. So I've been speaking to a few ministers, a few MPs this morning to try and figure out how they're all feeling. So one minister says to me, Wes and his people need to get back in their box. They should be focused on running the country, not playing Game of Thrones. So clearly on Starmer's side. Another minister says, I don't understand it. It seems very odd. Seems like number 10 thought it was a quiet briefing to send a message and it's got out of hand. If there was a big plot to resign, I haven't been asked. So that minister's saying, this plot that everyone's talking about is really not as big as number 10 perhaps is being suggested. Labour MPs telling me that actually they are more concerned about Keir Starmer's leadership now, today, than they were yesterday, which is what Wes Streeting was saying, that there's potentially been kind of shot in the foot. Another Labour MP says to me, it's nonsense. Everyone is fed up with him, but no one would have the guts to actually kick him out and get enough nominations. Everyone does want him to bog off, but no one knows who would be replacing him. But he's definitely toast in May. So you can actually see the party is not united behind Wes or Starmer. And so there is a suggestion among some of these ministers that they think perhaps number 10 has slightly over-egged their actions here and overdone it.
I think, like, taking a step back, what is kind of important here is that this is all happening 2 weeks before the budget. A budget when we know, for example, that they are probably, almost certainly, going to break the manifesto when it comes to tax, on a time when the Chancellor's job is in peril. And number 10 know that, as a result, Keir Starmer is absolutely not safe. And I guess that has just led to this kind of chaos in number 10, but in ministerial ranks, on the benches. No one knows what to do.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing I had kind of coming in this morning before the interview was thinking, we know that in this Game of Thrones sort of comparison, the person that wields the sword never takes the crown. Yeah. And the Prime Minister obviously is under pressure, and there are two massive moments to come, the budget and the May elections. So it's almost inconceivable, even if someone did want to take the crown, that they would be on manoeuvres, at least in a pronounced way, in the very short term. Wouldn't they wait?
I mean, I think most people that I've spoken to feel that the most vulnerable moment would be May, and therefore it would be the most logical moment. So knives out for Wes Streeting. The worry there, strategically, is you end up frustrating one of your best performers and often, sometimes, on air, most loyal anyway.
On that May thing, he was very firm ruling it out after the budget, but I did notice when I asked him about the May elections, he did not completely rule it out, and I just think that is interesting.
But on the budget, sorry, just quickly as well, he also said we should keep our promises.
Yeah.
Which is very kind of Lucy Powell rhetoric, and Lucy Powell's obviously seen as now a thorn in the side. Anyway.
Let's bring in Luke Sullivan, a former political director to Keir Starmer. Just to kind of introduce Luke to viewers who might not be aware of him, you were like right at the heart of the Starmer operation for many, many sort of years, worked for the Labour Party for an awfully long time as well.
Are you the source of the briefing?
No,
I'm joking.
Not anymore. Luke, what's going on?
Well, I think your viewers waking up this morning will be absolutely surprised and questioning what the hell is going on. And that is, frankly, what Labour MPs are feeling this morning as well. Wes was on your show, just a few minutes ago this morning, and I think demonstrated why he is one of this government's biggest and greatest communicators and assets. But look, there's no denying this. This is an extraordinary move from number 10. And, a conversation that used to happen between journalists in private, bars as sort of Westminster tittle-tattle, a taboo has been broken by the government, by whoever thought this was a good idea. My view is this is a terrible idea. It has massively backfired. And I think what we need and what we want to see this morning is the Prime Minister, who's obviously going to face, no doubt, multiple questions from Kemi Badenoch and other MPs, needs to find a way of shutting this down for the nonsense it clearly is.
Well, surely the only way to do that is to either remove your health secretary, which doesn't sound like is your interpretation of what's like to happen, or to remove a senior advisor in Downing Street who started all of this?
Well, look, I'm never going to get into the world of calling for members of staff to be removed, but I think definitely one of the questions I heard the Health Secretary being asked this morning, that was clearly the line that he was going. Look, this is clearly cannot have been an authorised briefing by the Prime Minister. I do not understand. I do not think he would...
You know Keir Starmer. You genuinely don't think he knew anything about that, then?
Look, Keir is... He is somebody who hates briefing. Sitting in meetings of the shadow cabinet, one of his biggest frustrations was the fact that, people chose to try and brief anonymously. And this is not how he does his politics. This is not how he... likes to conduct himself. I think somebody thought this was a good idea. It's blown up in their face. And what we need to do is try and get this government focused on what it matters, which is, as you've just been speaking, there are huge issues coming up in the next 2 weeks. And the British public, Wes was meant to be out this morning talking about, huge investments in the front line to get waiting lists down that your viewers care about, that this government needs to be focused on. And instead, the Labour Party is talking about itself when it said it was going to stop the chaos.
What about the flip side? And yes, most of the rhetoric in that interview with Sophy was supportive of the Prime Minister and denying any moves. But he did say that we should keep our promises when it comes to the budget. And that's at least a hint to say that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor will be in the wrong on perhaps what will be the single biggest moment of the government so far.
Yeah, look, I think it's very difficult for any politician who's bound by collective responsibility to answer questions about the budget. Look, of course, Rachel herself has said she wants to keep her manifesto commitments, but she has tried to lay the ground for what may be about to come. I think sometimes we overanalyse it. I don't think there is any sense that Wes or any of the other members of the Cabinet who have been briefed against overnight have been anything other than loyal to Keir Starmer and this government.
Can I ask you a question about Keir Starmer? Because he gave the conference speech, which I thought was actually a very good conference speech, right? And then it feels like he's just kind of not done anything. Like, you've got this budget in 2 weeks, which is going to be an absolutely decisive moment for this government. And I just don't... He's gone to COP. I mean, was that a good idea? We haven't heard him, really, talking about the kind of foreign prisoners being let out of jail by mistake. I mean, where is he?
Yeah, look, I think it's been a question that's been raised repeatedly about the amount of travel the Prime Minister's had to do, given the focus on the international front. I think you're right. I thought he had some real momentum coming out of conference. Actually, he went in looking quite potentially shaky and wobbly, given the Andy Burnham murmurings. Actually, the way that played to his strengths. He gave a really good speech. I think, what a lot of us wanted to see was that momentum being carried off. And I think, there's been a series of setbacks. That's what happens in government. Actually, I think what Keir should and could do today is to find a way of just shutting this down quickly. Look, it is concerning when members of the Cabinet are talking about the culture of some of the people in government, and that's been a sort of a theme that's been going on for quite a while.
OK, thanks very much indeed.
Luke Sullivan there. Now, Donald Trump has spoken for the first time about his threat to sue the BBC for $1 billion, saying he has an obligation to do so.
The White House has said it will bring legal action against the BBC over the editing of Trump's January the 6th speech in a Panorama documentary last year. He was talking to Fox News.
Are you going ahead and suing the BBC?
Well, I guess I have to. Why not? Because they defrauded the public, and they've admitted it, and their top echelon...
Director General and the CEO
This
both
is
resigned.
within one of our great allies. This is supposedly our great ally, BBC. The government has a chunk of that one, I guess. But that's a pretty sad event. They actually changed my January 6th speech, which was a beautiful speech, which was a very calming speech, and they made it sound radical. And they actually changed it. What they did was rather incredible. They're showing me the results later on, the results of what they did, how they butchered it up. But it was very dishonest.
Tonight, you are saying to our viewers that you will go forward and file a defamation lawsuit against the BBC.
Well, I think I have an obligation to do it because you can't allow people to do that. I couldn't allow 60 Minutes. We settled that one for many millions of dollars, and I couldn't have allowed that to take place.
Sally is here to talk about this with us in more detail. 60 Minutes that he referred to at the end there is a news show on CBS, and I guess it's an indication that he saw another one of these through, albeit it settled for $15 or $16 million, not the billion that's being mooted here. But I guess the takeaway from this is that he's not backing down yet, at least.
No, of course not. And he sent a letter, his lawyers have sent a letter to the BBC. He's now speaking to television programmes about this. He's not going to back down. I think it was quite evident from the beginning. And by the way, you said about that CBS lawsuit, he actually went after 10 billion from them, settled for 16 million at the end, which is really falling short. His lawyers are really busy right now. They're all also taking the Wall Street Journal to court for 10 billion, the New York Times for 15 billion. So these are big numbers that they go after, but whether they or not they get them is always yet to be seen, especially with the BBC. He's talking about 1 billion. He doesn't mention that in that clip. But what he does say is that it is his obligation to take them to court, because this is how Donald Trump thinks. He really believes in lawsuits. He thinks that when someone wrongs you, you have to go through the courts and really try to bleed them dry. The other interesting thing he mentions is about the CBS clip, which actually, as you mentioned, wasn't actually about him. It was a clip that they'd edited of Kamala Harris, who was his presidential rival. And you can see how much this hurts him, because not only was that clip not about him, but they also didn't issue an apology. They didn't express any regret, which is very different to the way the BBC has already approached this. But I think what this shows, this interview that he's given shows, is just how hungry he is for this fight with the BBC.
Sadia, great stuff. Thanks very much for that. Those comments coming overnight.
Now, the government says it will re-examine a decision to reject compensation for women affected by changes to the state pension age.
The so-called WASPI women, born in the 1950s, saw the threshold raised to match men. There's been criticism that the process was done too quickly.
So campaigners say the government has resisted them at every turn, and they're now urging the government to act quickly, saying that every 30 minutes a WASPI woman dies.
We should say WASPI stands for Women Against State Pension Inequality. Delighted to say that joining us now is Jane Cowley. She's the campaign manager for that organisation. Thanks so much for joining us on this. My first question is, what do you make of the statement yesterday? And for the viewers catching up to speed, Pat McFadden, the minister in charge of this department, said, after the government said in December that they weren't going to pay you any compensation, that they're reopening that decision?
Yes, so what has happened is that evidence that has been within the DWP forever, since 2007, because the DWP actually commissioned this research themselves in 2007, wasn't presented to the minister when she made the decision last year. Now, that evidence actually completely contradicts the reason she gave for not paying compensation. She said that women wouldn't read or remember letters sent to them giving them information about the change in their state pension age, whereas the 2007 evidence says the direct opposite of that, and it shows that women would have read, would have remembered, and would have acted on the information that was sent to them if it had gone out at the right time. So you can see that actually the government is now completely unable to defend its previous decision in court, and we have a judicial review scheduled for next month, and that's the reason for the backtracking on the part of the government.
I mean, what do you make of the timing of all this? Of course, it's 2 weeks before the budget. It doesn't seem likely that they're going to fully commit to any payment by then. Do you think this is political game playing so that they can still make their sums add up in 2 weeks' time? Do you actually think they'll come through and pay you compensation, or are they just trying to win your favour in the short term, or perhaps, I should say, lessen your disappointment in the short term?
I think we have to wait and see on that one to a certain extent. Pat McFadden promised to look at it and come to a new decision as quickly as possible. But it's disappointing that he didn't put a time frame on that, because we have sat through 6 years of an ombudsman investigation, a long time after the ombudsman's report before the government came forward with a decision. And really, we don't want to have to sit through yet another 6 months, 1 year, 18 months of waiting for Pat McFadden to look at the evidence properly and come to another decision. As you said earlier, one WASPI woman dies every 13 minutes. Time is not on our side, and the government really should act swiftly on this.
If there's some political sort of strategy going on, maybe it's all purely based on principle, and either way, if there are some other actions taken in the budget that hurt pensioners, perhaps it could relate to the triple lock, perhaps it could relate to tax deductibility of pension payments. Would that offset any good news that you might get on the compensation you're seeking?
Well, you know, we campaign on a single issue. We are not a pensions group as such. We campaign simply on the lack of communication that we had about the change to our state pension age. Pensioners, despite what many people read, are not generally well off. And, you know, WASPI women, really, we know from the contacts we have with the women born in the 1950s that a payment of £3,000 would make a very significant difference to many of those women's lives. Many of them are, despite the winter fuel allowance having been brought back in, are sitting and facing a cold winter ahead, and that payment would make a significant difference to millions of women.
Do you think that the majority of WASPI women were genuinely not aware of the change in pension age, or is it a small minority, or is it an issue of process where you were wronged?
The DWP's own research, which, again, the government chose to ignore when it made that early decision, actually shows that a significant majority of women did not know their pension age. They may have had some vague awareness that the pension age was rising, but they simply did not know at what age they would get their state pension.
In light of that, what is your message to younger people when we know how tight finances are, and the 3,000 or so payment you mentioned, I believe I'm right in saying, totaled up would cost Rachel Reeves over £10 billion to make that payment. What is the message to younger people who perhaps wouldn't therefore get such a benefit, or frankly other pensioners, male or female, that don't fall into that category?
I think really this is an issue about the government doing the right thing and accepting that it has made a mistake and putting that mistake right. Now, that's what we expect people to do in every other area of life. If you've made a mistake, you have to put it right, and sometimes you have to pay compensation because you've actually hurt someone by your mistake, and that's the issue here. We know that younger people, 72% of the public, feel that compensation should be paid to us. They feel it's the right thing to do. The government needs to get behind that, to accept that it's done something wrong and it has to put it right.
Jane Cowley, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, have you ever seen the Northern Lights? Because if you haven't, tonight could be your chance. The aurora was visible in the UK early this morning, and it's also supposed to be visible again this evening if you missed it.
And particularly in the north of the UK, but this is the view from Kansas. It says Kansas in Texas. Kansas is not in Texas, but anyway, somewhere in America.
Either Kansas or Texas, I think is.
Yeah, I don't quite know.
One of those two places.
No, and your best chance of seeing them will be in the northern parts of the UK, and may also be visible far in the south. Visibility today is down to geomagnetic storms. I'm not reading this, I just knew that.
Sure, you're an expert.
And it's also disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field. I actually did take some notes as I'm on the wrong page. I have another term that's going to impress you, but I can't find it.
It is, oh, go on then. I'm just going to chat a little bit.
There are currently coronal mass ejections taking place from the sun, and when those particles hit the Earth's atmosphere, it's what creates the Northern Lights.
They are amazing, though. Have you seen?
Have you?
No, it's very good, Wolf. It was excellent. I really enjoyed that a lot. Have you seen them?
No, but people in either Kansas or Texas have. We saw them in the back garden, like not that long ago as well. Really?
Yeah, because you can see them sometimes in the UK, and that's why genuinely you go and check it out tonight. I definitely am, because it is quite something. It's amazing. And what we found is that, I don't know why this works, because I'm not a scientist, unlike Wilf, who's got all the scientific knowledge, obviously. If you look at it through your phone and take a picture through your phone, it comes up more brightly than just by the naked eye. So I'd recommend that if you're trying to check them out.
That's rather depressing that technology's got a better experience.
I mean, look at them as well, obviously, but yeah.
We also want to touch on COP, which we were talking about a bit yesterday. We got some pictures from Brazil overnight. There were dramatic scenes, actually, in Belém after dozens of protesters forced their way into the event and clashed with security guards at the venue. They were including some Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. They stormed the conference centre before being forcibly removed. They were protesting against ongoing development in the Amazon rainforest.
The climate meeting, it should be said, has been met with some controversy because of its location right on the outskirts of the Amazon as well. Lots of leaders around the world attending, but notably nobody from Donald Trump's administration. Our correspondent Victoria Seabrook caught up with the Californian governor, Gavin Newsom, who said he was trying to fill that gap.
Hi, I'm from Sky News. Are you here to launch a presidential bid? Are you here to drum up support on the international stage?
Here in the absence of leadership from Donald Trump, who's abdicated responsibility on a critical issue. I'm here to show up on behalf of my country. I'm here to showcase California's leadership, dominance in the low-carbon green growth space. I'm here because I think it's more than electric power, it's about economic power, and I'm not going to cede America's economic leadership to China.
Are you just here because Trump's not here? Are you here to drum up support internationally? Is this the launch of your campaign?
Canada has an industrial compact.
Kudos to Victoria there for Governor Newsom. So Newsom, by the way, obviously now is the front runner, albeit very early, for the Democratic nomination for the next presidential election. And he's not in a majority of polls, you know, he's not 50% or whatever, but he's got more of a plurality than others, sort of 30% or whatever the backing. Do you know what sometimes his criticism is? He's too slick and polished. I think we got a good glimpse of that there. Absolutely nailed his argument, walking through a big conference room and still got his message across. So you can see part of his strengths, and sometimes people think he's a bit too polished, but impressive character.
Now, coming up after the break, we're going to be looking at why speaking lots of different languages might help slow down ageing.
There we go, that and magic mushrooms.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to the headlines this morning. The Health Secretary has denied he's at the forefront of a plot to oust the Prime Minister. There are reports of a potential leadership coup against Keir Starmer, with allies overnight insisting he's ready to fight off any challenge. Speaking to us this morning, Wes Streeting said such suggestions are self-defeating and don't help anyone.
These sorts of Westminster bubble process stories, boys getting carried away, these are things that distract.
Donald Trump has said he has an obligation to sue the BBC over the editing of a speech he gave before the US Capitol riot on January the 6th, 2021. The president reiterated his threat to sue the corporation for $1 billion, saying they've defrauded the public.
You are saying to our viewers that you will go forward and file a defamation lawsuit against the BBC.
Well, I think I have an obligation to do it because you can't allow people to do that.
Dozens of protesters have clashed with security guards at the COP30 climate summit in Brazil. They were demanding more land rights and a greater say in protecting the Amazon rainforest. Hola.
Bonjour.
Konnichiwa.
Ciao.
That was us speaking, if you couldn't tell, Spanish, French, Japanese and Italian.
We did
and
well.
We did it.
We did well, don't you think?
I think we should get a marks out of 10 from an expert. Well, we're apparently being multilingual slows down aging. Here to tell us more is Christos Plitsiakis, Director of the Centre of Literacy and Multilingualism at Reading University. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Sorry about the accents, can I just say, firstly? It was poor.
and looks very young and youthful. Is that? But how many languages do you speak?
Well, I speak Greek and English fluently. I'm learning some Spanish now. I used to know some German in the past. I don't remember anything. So.
And so, I guess what's central to this, there's part of this which is like, oh, that's an interesting headline. And then part of it, you read a bit more about it, which is maybe not that surprising, because I guess there's lots of areas where we say, as long as you're really engaging your mind often, it slows down some of the aspects of aging when it comes to your mental capacity.
Yeah, it's about using the language, not just knowing the language, because we know very well that when you are a fluent user of more than one languages, they're all active in your brain. So you have to control them. So I speak to you in English, I have to actively suppress my Greek to do that.
That's interesting, yeah.
And that's a challenge that the monolingual brain does not really face. But in order for the brain to deal with this challenge, it needs to be more efficient. And that's done by creating more connections, practically increasing some parts, the volume even of some parts of the brain. And now we have evidence to show that this new volume of the brain is more resilient to aging. We know that as we age, the brain shrinks, we lose tissue. So if you're a bilingual, you have created those very strong networks and connections that are more resilient to this. So you may keep your brain healthier for longer.
That's really interesting. And I guess it's particularly important to be having this conversation because languages, I think it's fair to say, are under threat at the minute, right? You know, university courses closing down. There's a big debate about whether AI is going to, get rid of translators completely.
Well, yes, that's unfortunate that the agenda doesn't really include language learning. If anything, it reduces language learning. And, well, yes, AI will have an effect, but it won't really replace communication, because what can you do if you go to another country? Are you going to use AI all the time?
Yeah, well, I'm afraid to say this to you, given your role, but I mean, the new AirPods that are coming soon will be live translation ability via AI. So, I mean, that does make it, it's not just like typing into Google Translate and delaying a conversation. So I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but that's going to destroy the demand for people trying to learn different languages, isn't it?
Well, it might have an effect on the interpreters, let's say, the professional translators, but still there will be an interest to learn a language and to communicate with other people in other countries, because it's not just about instructions at an airport, obviously.
Do you do languages?
Oh, no, I'm terrible at languages, but I wish I wasn't. And
no, that's what I mean. I wish I wasn't.
I do try a lot, actually. If I go to, we go to France a lot, for example. I really try with my languages, but I wish they were better. I'm not trying now on TV, but yeah, I do. And I also, I feel quite sad about the whole, scrapping of languages and stuff, because I just think that if we are in a world where everyone just talks English, or we lose so much of that enrichment when we go, abroad.
And the culture that comes with it.
Exactly.
Well.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I completely agree. I wish I had kept languages up. Didn't at all.
What's your favourite language?
My favourite language of the ones I speak.
Yeah.
You mean?
Well, there's only 2.
No, 4.
Oh, I thought.
Well, I don't think I have a favourite language. I like them all.
Yeah.
I mean, they have their own merits, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really interesting, Christos. And we should all learn more languages. Sadly, we're probably not going to now. A bit late.
No.
But, anyway, really interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now let's talk about migration. The journey from Libya to Europe is described as the deadliest and most dangerous migration path to Europe.
Migrants face forced and unpaid labour, kidnapping for ransom, trafficking and rape on the weeks-long journey as they try and reach Greece.
The UN International Organization for Migration estimates that more than 2,200 people died or went missing in the Mediterranean attempting to reach Europe last year.
Well, Sky Special Correspondent Alex Crawford and her team were given exclusive access to an operation trying to stop migrants getting to Europe. Here's a short taste of her report.
The crew on a cargo vessel has raised the alarm, but the recovery of the dinghy passengers is left to the East Libyans.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy full of people. Difficult to tell how many, but absolutely jam-packed. Legs hanging off, they're so full. They're saying, help me, as they were coming closer. And they're trying to throw them a rope to pull them in.
Panic is setting in. Their engine is broken and they've been nearly 4 days at sea. They're exhausted and wet and desperately thirsty. Many appear dehydrated and very weak. The dinghy is rapidly taking on water and minutes away from sinking. They don't realise yet, but they've just been pulled aboard a brigade ship run by one of the most powerful armed groups in the region. It's a TBZ ship under the command of General Haftar's son, Saddam. His forces are accused of a range of crimes by human rights groups, including rape, torture and smuggling. At this point, the ship's passengers think they're still going to Europe.
This boat is taking you back to Libya.
Really?
Yes.
I don't know.
These are the East Libyan Coast Guard.
And if we say that we're gonna go next, for example, in Greek, we're gonna go or we cannot go?
They're taking you away from Greece. They're taking you to Libya.
Wow. Alex is here with us to discuss this, and you can already watch the full report if you scan the QR code. You alluded to that moment last hour. It was the first time I'd seen it. Just extraordinary to be the person to tell them they were going home. Where exactly was that? Was that closer to Greece than Libya, or...?
Yeah, it was 5 hours sea crossing away from Libya.
Wow.
And very close, within, a short distance from, if they'd got a proper boat and if their engine had been working and if they'd got fuel, they probably would have been there in an hour or so.
Oh, wow.
Maybe not even that. Wow. And it took several times telling him that he wasn't going to Europe, because they were the initial reaction was relief that they'd been brought across on this big boat, relief that they'd survived after so long at sea, just, not running out of water, running out of food, running nearly out of hope, and then to realise that actually they were being taken right back. And they know, because a number of them are already doing it, that probably meant to stay in a detention centre, possibly having to pay a ransom to get out, maybe there for many months. I mean, some of the people we spoke to were there for a year.
Wow, it's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary moment, and I can't even imagine what it must have been like for you at the time as well. You have these very personal stories there. You can see the guy's face as you tell him the news. But it's part of a much bigger story about migration across the globe. Countries in Europe are all grappling with it in different ways, and then you see the kind of desperate people who are just going back again and again and again. I just wonder what your kind of reflections are on it, as someone who has seen it, across the world.
Well, this sort of the whole migration problem is going to be a very hot topic for whoever is the Prime Minister of Britain, and a number of leaders across Europe. And it seems to me that the evidence shows that they're tackling it right at the end of the very last bit of the journey, which is when they arrive into Europe. And although there are attempts from Italy and Greece who have fairly less tolerant approach to migration, as particularly, well, migration full stop, never mind illegal migration, they are doing deals with unrecognised governments who have a fairly long track record of very torture, rape, disappearance of people, and perhaps many European people, and including British people, might question whether that is the correct approach, and that perhaps the start of migration and dealing with it should start way back in helping persuade people not to get on a boat, because most of these people do not want to leave their homeland. They feel like they've been forced into it, and they're taking on a whole range of difficult, dangerous journeys to get away from danger.
That's the word I wanted to pick up on. But we obviously all talk about the small boat crossings across the Channel often, and there are sadly too often stories of people dying doing that. How dangerous is this crossing? I mean,
this is the world's most dangerous migration route. It is the world's most dangerous migration route in terms of deaths, in terms of near deaths, and I mean, let's look at what happened in 2015, which saw more than 1 million people crossing, and they went through Turkey at that point. At that point, President Erdogan was, as he is now, still in charge. And the suggestion, we covered that, my same crew covered that very meticulously, even getting on a boat and seeing the whole route. Now, at that point, it was clear to us President Erdogan was allowing this to continue. And in return, the following year, he got a €1 million deal to try and stop it. And I feel that this is history repeating itself with the authorities in East and West Libya, with General Haftar, who's basically in charge, the dictator in charge of East Libya. Certainly the suggestion is from a number of humanitarian groups and people who are tracking this, and we've witnessed it ourselves, that he is in absolute control in that part of the country. So the suggestion is, well, how is he not in control of illegal migration? And yet we've seen a spike of boats arriving in Greece, and the suggestion is that this is a manipulation to encourage cooperation, deals, economic deals, as well as international recognition from the Europeans. Of course, we've put this to the East Libyan authorities, and they have categorically denied it.
Well, you could also, not to be facetious, ask the same question, I guess, of the French then. I mean, if we're saying you could stop this and do so there, then perhaps the same would be applied in Northern Europe. But that's a debate for another day. Alex, fantastic stuff, as ever. Can we steal you next hour as well?
Steal me.
Excellent. More to come, guys. More to come. And do watch Alex's full report. Scan the QR code there on your screen right now to do so.
Now, yesterday we brought you the story of a young woman in care who took her own life after several warning signs were ignored. And it's a story that caused many people to call for better treatment for those in care. Among them was the BAFTA-winning actress Samantha Morton, who actually spent her own childhood in care.
Our People and Politics correspondent Nick Martin has been speaking to her, and a warning. This contains references to self-harm, and suicide.
I was a child of the state, just like Nanita. But I think it's really important that we all know that not every two stories are the same. I was put in care at birth and then in and out till I got the letter to say I was no longer, child of the state, if you like. I was no longer their responsibility, kicked out. And I was kicked out at 16 and put into a homeless hostel. I remember one Christmas where I'd actually ran away because I was being abused at the home, and I'd been away for a couple of weeks, sleeping rough, and at the back of the bins behind a co-op. I could just, you know, traipse the streets in the day, shoplifting sandwiches or whatever, and then just get my head down there at night. And I'd had enough. It was freezing. I know it was Christmas, and Christmas Day was coming up, so I went back to the home. And no one said Happy Christmas. I didn't have a present. There wasn't a card. They didn't even say welcome home. Nobody asked where I'd been. Nobody asked what happened to me. Just to think about what it would have been like for Nonita. Certainly living alone is on one hand liberating, but also terrifying.
And look, if you've been affected by any of the issues in this report, a reminder that you can contact the Samaritans. The number is 116 123, or email joe@samaritans.org.
And well worth checking out more of Nick Martin's reporting on this from yesterday and from today. Yeah, it does feel, doesn't it, that there is a unanimity in the feeling that something's got to be done to help kids in care. You know, more likely to die before they're 25, more likely to go to prison, more likely to end up homeless. One of these stories that, you know, I'm so happy that we're giving a push to on mornings. Absolutely. Now, more to come, of course, on the political front. Up next, the Lib Dems will be here on all of the latest political stories.
Turkey is burying its dead.
Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
Eastern Libya is the new doorway to Europe for people being smuggled from Africa and Asia.
We are close to Greece. You can see it.
We've obtained unprecedented access to the authorities.
Do you feel you're just scratching the surface?
We've been on the raids, out with the Coast Guard,
Absolutely desperate.
and inside the detention centres.
How did you cope with that?
To find what's pushing people to Europe and what's driving the authorities here to stop them.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back. An awful lot of politics this morning. I think febrile is the word that we use on days like this. We're talking to the Lib Dems next. Daisy Cooper, the deputy leader, is here. You're doing a big speech at 9:45, of course, which we'll be taking on the show as well. But first, I just want to get your reaction to our lead news this morning. I mean, it is all kicking off in the Labour Party. It feels like we've got this briefing war, and Wes Streeting, the House Secretary, coming out on this programme this morning to deny that he's part of a coup.
Well, I think I've got very mixed feelings. I mean, on the one hand, I think all of us outside the Labour Party are incredibly frustrated that this government just hasn't delivered the change that they promised. And it feels as though the public's frustration is now being internalised within the Labour Party. So I guess there's a little bit of hope. I'm ever the optimist, a little bit of hope that they finally get it. They finally realise how frustrated everybody is. On the other hand, we are 2 weeks out from a budget, and these kind of stories are destabilising. They're destabilising for the public, they're destabilising for the markets, they're destabilising for investors, whether domestic or international. And so the timing of this could be very damaging.
How happy are you with Ed Davey's leadership?
Oh, Ed is the most successful party leader we've ever had in our party's history. And if you look at the mess in the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, we are the most united party in Parliament.
Part of the reason I ask this is because, and I know why you're saying the most successful leader, because you've got all those MPs at the election, right? And I know you're going to say that that's the poll that matters. But the polling has shown that you're under a bit of pressure, not least from the Green Party. So just looking at Reform's latest tracker, Reform up top, then you've got Labour and the Conservatives, Greens on 15, Lib Dems on 14. So you've been leapfrogged.
So look, the polls that really matter are the ones when people...
I knew you were going to say that.
But it's true, right? We live in a democracy. Elections really matter. And you look at some of the recent by-elections recently, we are the party that is winning in the by-elections. We're winning seats off every other political party. We're doing really, really well on the ground in our seats where our campaigners are really active, and we're really pleased with that.
Do you think you need to be a bit more muscular, though? You know, you've got Zach Polanski, who was going out there, who was, grabbing headlines, and it feels sometimes that the Lib Dems are a little bit kind of cautious, maybe?
Well, look, Ed Davey has been pretty punchy on the BBC stories in the last couple of days, calling for Robbie Gibb to be chucked out, basically, by the Secretary of State. It's Ed that has been leading our calls calling our calls on the government to stand up and be stronger when dealing with Donald Trump. He was the first party leader in the last Parliament to call for a windfall tax. So, we are being pretty punchy as a party. And, of course, I'm sure you'll come on to our announcements today.
I definitely, I absolutely will. But just, you mentioned Trump, so I just did want to ask a bit about the BBC as well. Do you think the BBC is institutionally biased?
I think the BBC has made some really big mistakes in a number of stories. I think their editorial decisions have been pretty sloppy, and they've been incredibly slow to either apologise or correct those mistakes. But I think the way, as a Liberal Democrat, when I criticise the BBC, it's because I want it to succeed. I think it is really important that in an era of disinformation and misinformation, that we have a public broadcaster owned by the British people, for the British people, that can be a trusted news source. So I want the BBC to succeed. What I'm worried about is that I think some people are trying to weaponise these mistakes. So I do think mistakes have been made, but I think some people are trying to weaponise these mistakes, and the timing of this does seem pretty dodgy. And I think those people who criticise the BBC because they want to defund it, because they want to replace the BBC with a kind of American Fox-style news programme, I think really don't have British interests at heart. So we'll fight people who have those views.
Who are you talking about there?
Well, I think there are a number of people. I mean, obviously, Nigel Farage, the Reform Party, also the Conservative Party as well. And there's a number of them, and Conservatives sort of slightly all over the place on this issue, but there are people in those two parties that want to defund the BBC and they want to see it replaced with a Fox-style news channel. I think the BBC is a really important institution. It has made mistakes, but we need to safeguard its independence for the future.
Let's talk about your announcement today, because this is about VAT. You want a 5% cut in the budget to try and support the UK's hospitality industry. What's the idea?
So what's really frustrating at the moment is that the budget is in 2 weeks' time, and all we hear from the Chancellor is sort of rumours and hints that she's going to put up taxes, the very taxes she said that she would not put up. What we are saying instead is, why not raise a levy, a big windfall tax on the big banks? That would raise £30 billion. You could use just less than half of that to do two things. First of all, to drastically reduce people's energy bills in the first instance. And secondly, to give this VAT cut to hospitality so that we can save our high streets. At the moment, you will have seen business leaders and hospitality owners saying that their businesses are on the edge. Their business rates bills have gone up, the jobs tax has gone up. If we get that VAT cut on hospitality, it'll be good for our high streets, put money back in people's pockets, and it will get growth going again.
Is it, tricky to talk about, levies on banks, though? These are kind of mobile businesses, you can do investments abroad. It has a distorting effect on, obviously, doesn't it?
So, because of the way our quantitative easing programme works in the UK, we have a very peculiar system where taxpayers are effectively paying the big banks their profits. If the government does nothing, taxpayers will be giving £50 billion of taxpayers' money to the big banks over the next 5 years. We Liberal Democrats think that that is not fair. That is why we've suggested this windfall tax that is targeted, it's time limited, it wouldn't affect the risk that the banks would have to take. They've made no efforts to raise this money, they've taken no risk to raise this money. This windfall tax is fair and it would help us pay for things like getting energy bills down and saving our high street.
You got your big speech to prepare for. We're going to be showing it on Ridge and Frost, so I'll let you go and get ready for that. Thank you very much indeed, Daisy Cooper there for the Lib Dems.
Now, a little bit of fun to end the hour. A suspiciously successful pub quiz team in Manchester has been caught cheating red-handed. The small team have been taking home the prize of a £30 bar tab each week, catching the attention of other players and the staff at the Barking Dog in Urmston.
Now, the pub director, turned detective, obviously, watched through the window and then he caught the team whispering the questions into their smart watches. So they were then disqualified from the quiz, but the pub says they can still come back when the game isn't on.
It's quite a sort of cheap tactic to cheat on, just for a few free pints. It's rather disappointing.
30 quid bar bill, not to be sniffed at.
I know, but, you know, it's... The whole thing's meant to be a bit of fun, isn't it? I mean, I love a pub quiz, mainly because it's an excuse to gather in the pub. I'm not very good at the pub. I can come up with a very occasional niche answer.
What's your mastermind topic, then?
US stock market and...
often.
And the Arsenal during the Arsene Wenger years, probably.
Very specific, I love it.
Yeah. What would yours be?
Novels of Thomas Hardy. Politics, UK politics, maybe?
Again, we're not going to do very well unless we have some broader experts on our team.
I feel a bit sorry for these guys. How is it people cheat in pub quizzes all the time? How come this is a national story?
Because they won... We didn't have the stat in there. Do you see how many times they won?
Yeah, I guess,
They won, like... Where is it? I printed it off.
True.
It's by the way, this pub looks great. There's lots of pictures in this story. I did have the stat. I can't find it. Anyway, they won every single week.
Too much, yeah. They milked it, basically.
Basically, they should have lost accidentally once or twice and they wouldn't have got detective pub landlord on them. Anyway.
That's true. Lots more coming up. We're talking, of course, about Wes Streeting's comments on this programme today about that alleged coup.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
We're Sophy and Wilf. Good morning from me as well. We've got some big breaking political news this morning.
The Health Secretary rules out launching a plot to oust Keir Starmer as Downing Street readies for a leadership challenge.
These sorts of Westminster bubble process stories, boys getting carried away, these are things that distract.
Donald Trump says he has an obligation to sue the BBC as he threatens a $1 billion lawsuit over speech edits.
You are saying to our viewers that you will go forward and file a defamation lawsuit against the BBC.
Well, I think I have an obligation to do it because you can't allow people to do that.
Carrying signs saying our forests are not for sale break into the COP30 summit venue in Brazil.
Also today, the new film that explores an elderly woman's unexpected friendship with her young neighbour will be joined by the leading actress Miriam Margolyes and the director as well, Lee Knight.
And it's described as the deadliest and most dangerous people smuggling path to Europe. We've got a special report from Alex Crawford, who's been on the boats intercepting migrants in the Mediterranean.
A lot of desperation and urging us. They think we've got something to do with it and they're urging us to take them to Europe.
Hello, welcome to the programme. Now, you join us on a morning when Westminster is in overdrive about Keir Starmer's future. Allies at the PM have been briefing journalists that if there's a leadership challenge after the budget, he's prepared to fight it, which frankly shows just how worried they are about what's going to happen in 2 weeks' time.
So what's actually going on? Is there actually a plot to get rid of the Prime Minister, or is it just a sign of paranoia and bunker mentality in Number 10? Well, one name that was mentioned overnight, a potential challenger, was the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. He's then denied those claims explicitly on the programme this morning, saying that they were self-defeating in the first place. Sophy asked whether there was a rotten culture in the Labour Party to Wes Streeting.
I'm not going to give whoever's behind this any more kind of oxygen and credit. I do think that, going out and calling your Labour MPs feral is not very helpful. I do think that trying to kneecap one of your own team when they are out, not just making the case for the government, but actually delivering the change that we promised, I think that is also self-defeating and self-destructive behaviour. I also think whoever did this doesn't speak for the Prime Minister. I speak for the Prime Minister.
Wes Streeting, they're denying being part of the coup. He had a pretty strong message, I think it's fair to say, to those people in Number 10 when he was asked about the briefing operation that has clearly happened.
I'd like to commend them for at least taking on board the feedback about sexist briefings, because we've seen this before. Lucy Powell, Bridget Phillipson, Angela Rayner could go around pretty much the entire cabinet table. So at least they're picking on one of the boys now. But in all seriousness, it doesn't help anyone. It's not true.
The thing is, there has clearly been a briefing operation about him directly. His name has come up several times across different outlets as well. So I wanted to put those specific allegations to him directly. Listen to what he said. There's a few specific allegations about you that have been put out in the last 24 hours. I want to put them to you directly. Firstly, there's the Times. Downing Street figures suspect that Streeting could demand the Prime Minister's resignation in the days after the budget. Are you going to rule that out?
Yes, and nor did I shoot JFK. I don't know where Lord Lucan is. Had nothing to do with Shergar. And I do think that the US did manage to do the moon landings. I don't think they were fake.
Well, let's get out to Downing Street. Mari's moved over there for us. Mari, what are you hearing this morning as all of this is, I was going to say settled down. I don't think it is. It's sort of taken off further, but we've learned more of what was being rumoured and briefed about last night.
Yeah, I don't think it's settling down. I think actually it's creating a level of frustration among MPs for the fact that they feel actually this is a bit of a distraction and an unnecessary intervention from number 10. I've been speaking to several MPs, several ministers this morning who are all really kind of scratching their heads as to what on earth has gone on and what the logic is behind this briefing from number 10 that is really out of the ordinary. So one minister says to me, they're very much on Keir Starmer's side, clearly. Wes and his people need to get back in their box. They should be focused on running the country, not playing Game of Thrones. So pointedly attacking Wes Streeting and saying that his plotting is the problem. Another minister in the government that I've spoken to says, it seems very odd. It looks like what number 10 thought was quiet briefing to send a message got out of hand. If there was a big plot to resign, as in massive resignations from the government to trigger a leadership bid, that's what they're referring to there, they say, I haven't been asked. And then Labour ministers, Labour MPs also frustrated. One Labour MP who says that they are really not a fan of Wes Streeting, they don't believe in his politics, they're not from the same wing of the party as Wes Streeting, actually say they think he's come off better this morning, they think he's been far more professional. And actually they have more respect for him than Keir Starmer in this moment. They're more concerned about Starmer's leadership today than they were yesterday. And another Labour MP who seems to be finding this really quite amusing has called it all nonsense, said that everybody is fed up with Keir Starmer, but there is no consensus yet on who would replace him. And they have no idea, really, who the party would rally around in the event of a leadership challenge. And therefore, that actually helps Keir Starmer. So this morning, questions around what the strategy, what the thinking was behind this kind of briefing attack on Wes Streeting. And really, it looks like perhaps it's blown up in their face.
Mari, great stuff. Thanks so much for that. And let's continue the discussion. Sam is with us around the set. And Sam, I mean, there's so many different areas we could take this and reflect on. I almost want to start where we had the last clip from Wes Streeting, which is that he did say we should keep our promises going into the budget. So for all of this kind of, we support the Prime Minister, we're standing everything down, there's still a bit of a sort of underhand threat there from Wes Streeting.
Yeah, I don't think today's a story about Wes Streeting. Today is a monumental disaster for Keir Starmer. There is no dispute on the basic facts. The basic facts is that people in Downing Street went out and told the country he is so weak that he could be challenged after the budget, which is in 2.5 weeks' time. That is, I mean, I've never seen a briefing anything like it, and that has dramatic consequences for his political standing. His closest team are saying, we think we could be in for an absolutely disastrous time, and picked a fight with the Health Secretary, a fight that it is not clear that they could win. Today, Wes Streeting came out, and yeah, he nibbled around promises being broken and then sort of slightly qualified it. He also said the things have got to change. He's basically calling for whoever did the briefing to be sacked. And that brings a dynamite question for the next few hours for Keir Starmer. Is he going to hunt out who said it, or did he know himself? And if he knew himself, he's basically saying, I don't trust my health secretary, he's got to get rid of him. And if he didn't know, he's got to sack somebody in number 10. Which is it going to be?
It is extraordinary, because on the surface, that kind of Wes Streeting interview and the way that he's behaved has kind of put to bed, some of the things he kind of, as you said, kind of deflected with humour, said Keir Starmer's doing a great job. But he also said that number 10, or someone in number 10, has tried to kneecap him, and he listed off a whole load of other people he says have been subject to similar briefing operations. I mean, the other thing that I've been wondering as well this morning, Sam, is it true? Is there an active plot to get rid of Keir Starmer after the budget? Is this why they've been forced to do it?
So I wish that the answer to that question was as binary as you ask it, because governments don't fall because of active plots, always fall because of active plots by one individual. I think maybe Boris Johnson was a bit of an exception, but even the example of Boris Johnson, governments fall because they have rotted, because they are not advancing, because decisions can't be made, because policies can't be defended, because stuff can't get through Parliament, because decisions are having to be reversed, because politically they're too weak, often in the eyes of MPs. Are we seeing that? I am afraid to say that there are few people in the Labour Party who don't think that we're quite close to that. There is decay in this government that is serious, and that's why there's worried about whether or not the budget will land. Is there agreement on who should take over? No. Are there a few people maybe gently playing footsie? Looking at Wes, looking at Shabana, looking at others? I don't know. I mean, maybe a little bit around that. Is that a plot? Well, I would say that's a symptom of our political system that encourages ambition in politics. And one person's ambition is a person trying to do them down's plot. So I think we're in a grey area there.
Well, I mean, also the only other thing that makes it seem unlikely that you have an outright plot from someone like Wes Streeting is that Wes Streeting's not an idiot. And we have just seen this backfire coming into conference for Andy Burnham. So you just don't imagine somebody would be really actively trying to manoeuvre ahead of the budget, even if, as you say, people are playing footsie. My question, though, to what you just said there, Sam, is the budget going to go ahead as planned? I mean, are you suggesting otherwise, that they can't get things through Parliament?
There will be a budget 2 weeks tomorrow. What I am saying, and have been saying for a long time, is that the scale of the hole that Rachel Reeves has to fill will blow the public's mind when they find out the necessary measures. And the hellfire that I'm expecting as part of the blowback, I think is still underpriced, even in government, certainly by MPs and definitely by the public. And good luck anybody in the days and weeks after November the 26th in politics who's looking forward to Christmas, because that's not what you're going to be focusing on.
Extraordinary stuff. Sam, thank you very much. Always good to have you on the programme this morning.
Now, Donald Trump has spoken for the first time about his threat to sue the BBC for $1 billion, saying he's got an obligation to do so.
The White House has said it will bring legal action against the BBC over the editing of Trump's January the 6th speech in a Panorama documentary last year. He was talking to Fox News.
Are you going ahead and suing the BBC?
Well, I guess I have to. You know, why not? Because they defrauded the public, and they've admitted it, and their top echelon.
Director General and the CEO
This
both
is
resigned.
within one of our great allies. You know, this is supposedly our great ally, BBC. The government has a chunk of that one, I guess, but that's a pretty sad event. They actually changed my January 6th speech, which was a beautiful speech, which was a very calming speech, and they made it sound radical. And they actually changed it. What they did was rather incredible. They're showing me the results later on, the results of what they did, how they butchered it up. But it was very dishonest.
Tonight, you are saying to our viewers that you will go forward and file a defamation lawsuit against the BBC.
Well, I think I have an obligation to do it because you can't allow people to do that. I couldn't allow 60 Minutes. You know, we settled that one for many millions of dollars, and I couldn't have allowed that to take place.
Comments there from President Trump late last night to Fox News. Sadi is here to talk to us a bit more about it. Remind us of the demands he's laid out for the BBC. He's made some comments. He's going to come through with his lawsuit if what doesn't happen.
So his lawyers have sent a letter to the BBC. Essentially, they're saying they need to take back what was said in that Panorama programme, issue an apology. He's threatening a $1 billion lawsuit on the BBC. And we know that when President Trump says that, he usually follows it through. His lawyers are currently busy with a $15 billion lawsuit against the New York Times and a $10 billion one against the Wall Street Journal. But that doesn't mean that's the kind of money he'll end up getting. The CBS interview that he mentioned there, which was an edited clip of Kamala Harris, his election rival. That edited clip he had an issue with. He took them to court. They settled for $16 million, which is falling real short of the $10 billion that he'd sought initially from CBS and its parent company, Paramount. But what we can see from that language in that interview, he's talking about this being an obligation on him to sue the BBC. So it gives you an insight into the way he thinks. He looks at this as something that he has to do. He really believes this is the way forward for him. And when he mentions that CBS documentary, as I say, that was a clip about something someone else said that was edited, but he said it looked bad on him. And also, CBS never issued an apology. They didn't express any regret for that. They settled for $16 million, but didn't ever say that they were wrong with what they had done. And I think that shows you just how much this really matters to President Trump, because the BBC obviously has gone a lot further.
I mean, I don't think the headline numbers are ever what anyone actually expects. I mean, if this did see it through as a lawsuit and the BBC had to pay damages, I don't care if they're 10 grand or $1 million, obviously not going to be $1 billion. That would be extraordinary when you factor in this is the British-owned state broadcaster. He actually referenced that in part of the interview and said, oh, I guess the government, he said they're our close ally, I guess the government's got a piece. You know, I still kind of not quite sure this goes the whole way through to a lawsuit, even though he's not backing down yet.
Well, with President Trump, you just never know.
No.
He's very determined.
He certainly is. He certainly is. That's great stuff. Thank you.
Now, the government is going to reconsider whether women affected by a rise in the state pension age should be compensated. The so-called WASPI women who were born in the 1950s saw their pension age rise in line with men from 60 to 65.
But many say they weren't given sufficient warning of the change, which impacted when they could claim their state pension. Well, earlier, Jane Cowley, the campaign manager of WASPI, told us the government must accept it made a mistake.
This is an issue about the government doing the right thing and accepting that it has made a mistake and putting that mistake right. Now, that's what we expect people to do in every other area of life. If you've made a mistake, you have to put it right, and sometimes you have to pay compensation because you've actually hurt someone by your mistake, and that's the issue here. We know that younger people, 72% of the public, feel that compensation should be paid to us. They feel it's the right thing to do. The government needs to get behind that, to accept that it's done something wrong and it has to put it right.
Now, we just want to bring you some pictures from Brazil overnight. There's been dramatic scenes at the COP30 summit in Belém. It's after dozens of protesters forced their way into the event and then they clashed with security guards.
Well, a group of demonstrators did storm in, as we just mentioned. They were forcibly removed. They were protesting ongoing development of the Amazon rainforest.
Well, the climate meeting has been met with controversy over its location just on the outskirts of the Amazon.
The meeting has, of course, drawn leaders from around the world, but notably not from the White House, not directly from President Trump's administration. But Victoria Seabrook, for us, caught up with one high-profile American political leader who was there, the Governor of California, Gavin Newsom.
Hi, I'm from Sky News. Are you here to launch a presidential bid? Are you here to drum up support on the international stage?
Here in the absence of leadership from Donald Trump, who's abdicated responsibility on a critical issue. I'm here to show up on behalf of my country. I'm here to showcase California's leadership, dominance in the low-carbon green growth space. I'm here because I think it's more than electric power, it's about economic power, and I'm not going to cede America's economic leadership to China.
Are you just here because Trump's not here? Are you here to drum up support internationally? Is this the launch of your campaign?
Canada has an industrial compact.
Obviously, that's the California Governor, Gavin Newsom. Kudos to him for being there, but also politically smart, obviously. It's a very party political issue in the US, and he is, the front runner. He's not declared yet, but the front runner to be the next Democratic nominee for the presidency in 2028. Gosh, looking ahead to that election already. But very impressive, I think. Often the fact he is so impressive as a communicator works against him. People think he's too slick at times, but I think, if he embraces all of these types of things and delivers with that rhetoric, it might work.
Yeah, want to keep your eye on.
For sure.
Well, the Conservatives' Robert Jenrick is going to join us after this short break on what is, I have to say, a pretty busy day in Westminster.
we are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, welcome back. Well, it's a very, very busy Parliament today. PMQs, of course, but that's been totally overshadowed by the extraordinary briefing and rumours about plans to oust Keir Starmer. So an awful lot is happening, I have to say, in Westminster today. We can bring in the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick. What do you make of it all?
Well, good morning. It feels like an end of days thing, doesn't it, where you've got a government that's out of energy, out of ideas. It's led by a Prime Minister who looks weak and paranoid this morning.
So they learnt a few lessons from the last Conservative government, then, you think?
Well, look, it feels like a government that's got months to live, not 3.5 years. You've got a Prime Minister who's now machine gunning his own cabinet ministers, getting his advisers to brief against his own ministers.
We don't know, of course, if the PM knew about it, right?
Well, he hasn't denied it, has he? I mean, I heard Wes Streeting say that the PM had even messaged him to ask if he was all right. I mean, look, I don't really care, to be honest, about the internal politics of the Labour Party. I don't think most people do in the country. What they want this morning is to know that the government is getting on and actually doing things to fix the country. We hear that in a matter of days, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is going to hike taxes on working people who can't afford it right now. We've got yesterday David Lammy, the Justice Secretary, admitting that prisoners are being let out of jail accidentally on an almost daily basis. Why isn't the government actually buckling down, doing its job and trying to improve the lives of people in this country rather than fighting amongst themselves in this frankly childish and pathetic manner?
We spoke to Wes Streeting earlier on the programme. Look, he's clearly an ambitious cabinet minister. He does lots of interviews. He's seen as quite kind of slick, does a lot on social media. A lot of people think he has leadership ambitions. Are you basically the Conservatives' Wes Streeting?
Well, I have known Wes for a long time, but I think that's where the comparisons end. Look, we had a leadership contest in the Conservative Party a year ago. Kemi is our leader. That is all ancient history, and I'm doing my job as Shadow Justice Secretary, trying to hold Labour to account, as I did yesterday in Parliament with David Lammy, who literally came to Parliament to concede that, despite putting in place what he called the strongest ever checks, prisoners are being let out. They're on the streets. There are manhunts happening across our country right now. There's even one prisoner who we couldn't say whether they were in or out of prison. I mean, has he been to his cell? He's either in the cell or not. He's literally lost control of our prison service at the moment.
I want to talk to you about the budget, because it feels to me like an awful lot of what is going on is basically about the elephant in the room, which is the budget. Well, not really an elephant in the room, we're talking about it the whole time, but the budget that is in 2 weeks' time, right? You said in this interview that you're worried about taxes going up, but we need to get real, don't we, about the size of the black hole, about the serious pressures that this country is under. I don't want to make this party political. I don't want to talk about the blame game. What would you do to get the finances back on track?
Well, the first thing is you've got to get control over public spending. And at the heart of that is our welfare budget. You've got to bring that down by getting more people back into the workplace. We can't have millions of people out of work in our country and the benefits bill keep ballooning year after year. The problem with this Labour government is that even before this latest melodrama, they couldn't get any of those changes through Parliament.
Come on, we're making it political already. You can't help yourself, can you?
No, but this is just reality. Keir Starmer tried to do modest changes to the benefits bill earlier in the year and had to backtrack. The problem is going to be that if you can't control public spending, you're going to have to keep raising taxes. If you keep raising taxes, you're going to put off investment. Businesses aren't going to create jobs and growth in our country, and you're now seeing that because unemployment is rising month after month. It's now the highest level for 5 years. We're in a doom loop right now, which is the creation of Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. And unless they can break that cycle, it's just going to get worse and worse for people in this country.
You're talking there about, benefits going up, and many people will, recognise it, and I'm sure you will acknowledge this started under the last Conservative government, and this makes it so hard for you to be trusted on these things as well.
I don't think that's right.
I'm just looking at
on unemployment.
We left unemployment
benefits, much lower. Well, that's one of the big drivers of the cost of benefits.
So benefits didn't go up after the last Conservative government? Come on.
Well, they were rising after the pandemic, but we did put in place in the last few months of the Conservative government changes to try to improve that. But
my question was that benefits went up under the Conservatives.
Well,
that is a
well,
fact.
in honesty, in the early days of the Conservative government, there were great welfare reforms, like the introduction of universal credit, which tried to make work actually pay. Post-COVID, did the benefits bill go up? Yes, it did. And that needs to be bared down on now.
The point I was making is that the issue that you have a trust. Now, if you look at the polling, for example, YouGov's tracker has you on 18%, 1 point behind Labour, but it's 9 points behind Reform.
Yeah, it's not good enough.
It's bad, right?
It's not good enough. The Conservative Party's got to change. It's got to be in tune with the public by admitting the mistakes that we made when we were in office and bring forward serious answers to these challenges. That is now what we're doing. You've seen some of the policies that have been put forward, like securing our borders, like having the honest debate about the size of the state and the welfare budget. How do we help those people back into the workplace? It's only by doing that that we can begin to regain the public's trust and confidence. It's going to be a long road. I'm the first to admit that, but we are making progress right now.
OK, thanks very much indeed, Robert
Thanks very much,
speaking to us there.
We're going to take a break here. When we come back, the actress Miriam Margolyes and director Lee Knight will discuss their new film, A Friend of Dorothy.
Hello, welcome back to the news this morning. The Health Secretary has denied he's at the forefront of a plot to oust the Prime Minister. There are reports of a potential coup against Keir Starmer, with his allies overnight insisting he's ready to fight off any challenge. Speaking to us this morning, Wes Streeting said such suggestions are self-defeating and don't help anyone.
These sorts of Westminster bubble process stories, boys getting carried away, these are things that distract.
Donald Trump has said he has an obligation to sue the BBC over the editing of a speech he gave before the US Capitol riot on January the 6th, 2021. The president reiterated his threat to sue the corporation for $1 billion, saying they defrauded the public.
You are saying to our viewers that you will go forward and file a defamation lawsuit against the BBC.
Well, I think I have an obligation to do it because you can't allow people to do that.
Dozens of protesters have clashed with security guards at the COP30 climate summit in Brazil. They were demanding more land rights and a greater say in protecting the Amazon rainforest.
Now let's talk about migration. The journey from Libya to Europe is described as the deadliest and most dangerous path to Europe.
Migrants face forced and unpaid labour, kidnapping for ransom, trafficking and even rape on the weeks-long journey as they try to reach Greece.
The UN International Organization for Migration estimates that more than 2,200 people died or went missing in the Mediterranean attempting to reach Europe last year. Our special correspondent Alex Crawford has been given exclusive access to an operation stopping migrants from reaching Europe. Here's a short taste of her report.
The crew on a cargo vessel has raised the alarm, but the recovery of the dinghy passengers is left to the East Libyans.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy full of people. Difficult to tell how many, but absolutely jam-packed, legs hanging off. They're so full. They're saying, help me, as they were coming closer. And they're trying to throw them a rope to pull them in. Panic is setting in. Their engine is broken and they've been nearly 4 days at sea. They're exhausted and wet and desperately thirsty. Many appear dehydrated and very weak. The dinghy is rapidly taking on water and minutes away from sinking. They don't realise yet, but they've just been pulled aboard a brigade ship run by one of the most powerful armed groups in the region. It's a TBZ ship under the command of General Haftar's son, Saddam. His forces are accused of a range of crimes by human rights groups, including rape, torture and smuggling. At this point, the ship's passengers think they're still going to Europe. This boat is taking you back to Libya.
Really?
Yes.
I don't know.
These are the East Libyan Coast Guard.
And if we say that we're gonna go next, for example, in Greek, we're gonna go or we cannot go?
They're taking you away from Greece. They're taking you to Libya.
Alex was here. It's just an extraordinary report. I mean, the number of people on that boat, the state of the boat, the state that they are in after the journey, and then that realisation that you can see in his face that it was all for nothing, that he was going to go back.
Really vulnerable people, desperate people, and at that point, really at their lowest ebb. And let's remember, they're being taken back to detention centres, not allowed to claim asylum, or they're not able to claim asylum because there is no recognised government there. And then they're going to be deported at some time back to the war zone where they've come from. And in the meantime, there is very little oversight as to what happens in those detention centres or what happens from this point onwards, with quite a lot of evidence that have been gathered by many different organisations, including Sky News, that many of these people will be held to ransom. Their families will be sent very upsetting videos of them possibly being tortured, certainly being abused, lack of sanitation, lack of basically all human rights in order to get their freedom.
Extraordinary.
Alex, whilst we've got you, and we should again mention, if you want to watch that full report, just scan the QR code on the screen now, and it's on the Sky News website. But also just wanted to get your views on the latest situation in Syria. And quite extraordinary, the meetings that we've seen in the Oval Office in the last week, President Trump with President al-Shara, if I guess we still officially call him president in Syria. I mean, what is your snapshot of how much control back in Syria he has and how significant this White House meeting was?
I mean, really good question. First of all, astonishing meeting. I mean, this is not just a man who less than a year ago had a $10 million bounty on his head and was the leader of a proscribed terror group. Less than a year ago, this is the same man who was held in prisons in Iraq by the US military in Abu Ghraib. But also, no other Syrian head of state has ever been hosted in Washington. So this is ever. So this is quite a dramatic journey from prisoner to president. His strength at home is much diminished, I think. It's definitely very delicate at the moment because he's got a lot of challenges. And he came to Washington and he's relying on the US, the Americans and the Arab states, exactly what President Trump wants, because he wants to try and draw the influence away from Iran, which has had a big influence in Syria up until now, and Russia. And President Trump clearly sees this as the way to do it. And President Shara is using his meetings with the President Trump as a way of bargaining quite a lot. He wants sanctions lifted completely, and that's not within the gift of President Trump. It's got to go to the US Congress. And on the ground, the people of Syria haven't yet seen the impact of any of the lifting so far. They're still struggling very much economically. And of course, President Shara has got the Kurdish-led SDF in the northeast. He's got Israeli military taking over parts of the south. And the two sides are constantly, and of course the problems with the ethnic minorities like the Druze and the Alawites.
So the hopes for the Syrian people are still pretty low, pretty distant. There's a lot.
No, I mean there's a lot of hope because just take our Sky's long-term producer who I've worked with for over the past 15 years, who is Syrian. His doubts about a former leader of a terror group who was linked to Al-Qaeda taking over the country was very much in the background compared to getting rid of Bashar al-Assad, with thousands of people who disappeared, a dictator in charge, and he has been a refugee in Turkey for the last 14, 15 years. So there's still a lot of hope, but let's not underestimate the massive number of challenges ahead, not just for President Shara, but because he's got extremist elements within his supporters. So whilst he's playing basketball with military officials, we've seen, the astonishing images. A few weeks ago, he was at a mosque in Damascus, and within his band of loyal supporters, he's got to try and balance elements who want to go forward and do deals with the Americans, but President Trump wants him to recognise Israel and to do a deal with Israel, and that has not happened, since 1948. They've never recognised Israel.
Can you come back every day so that we can continue these discussions?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I feel like I learned...
You're on.
I learned so much from it.
You're not busy.
It's really, it's fascinating. Thank you so much for bringing us those reports from Libya as well. That crossing, which really feels like it gets to the heart of something that we talk about an awful lot here in Westminster. But the part of the story is also where you're telling it as well. Thank you so much, Alex.
Now, a new short film called A Friend of Dorothy aims to explore loneliness in old age and the importance of unlikely friendships. It's being supported by Age UK with the hope of showcasing what difference the smallest acts of kindness can make to us all. Let's have a little taste of it.
Come round here often?
Every day.
Wow, just passing strange.
Besties, then. You are the first person ever, truly, to see me.
Well, joining us now is the lead actress in it, Miriam Margolyes, and the director, Lee Knight. A very good morning to you both. Thanks for joining us. Miriam, tell us how you got involved in a project like this, and I guess given what it's trying to achieve.
I didn't know it was a project, it was a script. And Lee sent it to me. And it's very flattering when people send you things. And he said he'd written it with me in mind to play it. And I read it and I knew immediately it was brilliant. And so I said yes. I said, I don't know when I can do it. I think it was about 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago, yeah.
And I'm thrilled with it. I've seen it. And I think it's brilliant. And he is too. And Alistair, who is my co-star, it's actually his performance, really. And he's just won Cannes Best Actor in a short film.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
And you just won Best Director.
I did, yeah. Miriam should be my agent.
Yeah, I know, I was about to say. Lee, tell us then, I obviously have been corrected for using the word project, but why now to release it if it was made 2 years ago? And what is, other than writing a great script and directing it, what is the message behind it?
It's interesting you say that. I think that projects always take a long time to come to fruition, especially when you want someone like Miriam Margolyes, who's, you know, extremely busy. And I started writing it during lockdown, actually. I was away doing Hamlet in an age-blind production with Ian McKellen in Windsor. And it's based on an elderly friend of mine and my husband's that passed away a couple of years ago. So it's a fictional story inspired by that very unique, very rare friendship. And so then I did write it for Miriam, got the script to her, but these things take time, and it was all about timing, actually, for both me and Miriam. And then it just, perfect timing. I met a producer, I've got a wonderful team, and I met a producer called James Dean who believed in me and believed in this story, and then really just that was like the catalyst for everything happening. And I think now, because these stories, I mean, look, the world is, we're going through some difficult times, and I think that we really need to understand companionship and how important it is to see people despite any differences we have. And I hope the film brings a sense of that lightness to people at the moment.
Yeah, it's that companionship, because the film explores this friendship between a boy, a 17-year-old, and his elderly neighbour. And I was interested to see it's supported by Age UK, who say that over 1 million elderly people go more than a month without speaking to friends and family, which I found genuinely quite staggering. Miriam, are you hoping that it kind of addresses some of those issues?
Oh, I'm sure it will. It's a human story. And I think we're all separated off at the moment. Everybody's going into different camps, aren't they? And I don't like that. I want togetherness. So in my own life, in my own home, I have an intergenerational situation. I've got 2 young lodgers and I adore them. And I want people to reach out across differences. That's the point. We shouldn't all be in little cages as we are.
Absolutely. And actually, the film, the friend of mine, Shirley, you know, her health really started to deteriorate during COVID, because it was loneliness that actually, in the end, really made her spiral. And we had this incredible friendship where we would go to the theatre with her, and her husband had passed away and her children lived abroad. And she didn't have anyone around her that would kind of nurture those passions she still had. So this film is about also, you know, finding friendship when you least expect it and having more in common with someone than you ever think you might. So, yeah, loneliness is
it's a killer.
Yeah.
Lee, Miriam, thank you both for joining us. Great to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Just wanted to bring you a little bit of breaking news before we go to break. 7 men have been charged with more than 40 offences against 11 teenage victims as part of an investigation into group-based child sexual exploitation in Bristol. That's according to Avon and Somerset Police, and just crossing moments ago. We're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, we will be listening in to the Liberal Democrat Stacey Cooper's speech.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report. Sky Business sponsors this report.
I just want to take you to central London, where the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Daisy Cooper, is about to deliver the party's pre-budget speech. She's in a pub because it's all about a VAT cut for hospitality businesses, including restaurants and pubs.
2 weeks today, the Labour government will deliver their second budget. And let's be honest, it is looking a bit bleak. They promised they would deliver change, and they haven't. They promised that they wouldn't put up key taxes, and they're preparing to do just that. And they promised that they wouldn't come back for more. Well, we'll see. The problem is, the Labour government has no vision. No vision for our country, no vision for our economy, and whatever their destination, they are failing to take the British people with them. This cannot go on. We Liberal Democrats know that all the while that Labour is engrossed in their infighting, people are struggling. Every single day, people are struggling with the cost of living. They're scared that they can't keep their homes warm this winter. And as well as the cost of living crisis, we also have a cost of doing business crisis. You just have to go down to the high street and you can see it. There are cafes and restaurants and bars and pubs and other businesses closing their doors, shutting up shops. And if the Labour government is not careful, this cost of doing business crisis is going to snowball. And in the coming months, we will see many more businesses shutting their doors, boarding up the windows and handing back the keys. This cannot go on. That is why, today, we Liberal Democrats are incredibly proud to announce that we, if we were in government and if we were doing the budget in 2 weeks' time, we would deliver a £12 billion emergency package to drive down energy bills for households, to slash VAT for hospitality, attractions and accommodation, and to put in train the measures that would save our beloved high streets. Politics is about choices. And we Liberal Democrats are choosing where we would raise the tax. We would not be looking to raise income tax of struggling families. We wouldn't be looking to raise more taxes on small businesses. We would be looking to raise taxes in a fair way on those that can afford to pay the most. We have said that we would raise a one-off windfall tax on the big banks. And if the government doesn't do this, if the government doesn't levy a windfall tax on the big banks, then in the next 5 years, we taxpayers will be shelling out £50 billion to the big banks. We Liberal Democrats say that that is not OK. So we will levy a big windfall tax on the big banks, and that could raise £30 billion in the next 5 years. We will use just half of that to deliver this package to drive down energy bills, tackle the cost of living, save hospitality and our high streets. As I say, politics is about choices. And we Liberal Democrats choose. We choose to tax the big banks in order that we can cut energy bills, roll out a VAT cut for hospitality, save our high streets, and give the British people a much-needed morale boost. Thank you.
So I might have missed it, but I didn't hear it either in your interview earlier, Sophie, or in that, what the tax is. She said she'd levy a one-off tax, windfall tax on the banks, and it would raise 30 billion over 5 years. But I'm not quite sure exactly how and what part of the banks it would be or what level the tax would be. Just as a reminder for our viewers, there's already a specialist tax on banks. They pay an extra 3% of corporate tax rates that other companies don't pay. It used to be 8%. It came down in April 2023 when Sunak and Hunt decided to cut that. So presumably she's talking about increasing that again. Not exactly clear. Let's listen to some of this.
I think that Wes Streeting should be focused on sorting out the crisis in the NHS, not the crisis in number 10. I think if number 10 has realised that the country is frustrated and they've internalised that as a party, that is a good thing because it gives us hope they might start to turn things around. But on the other hand, we are just 2 weeks away from the budget. These kind of stories are incredibly damaging for the markets and for investors, both domestic and international. And as a country, we don't want that to be so destabilising. We need to show that Britain PLC is open for business, and that would be the message from we Liberal Democrats. On the first point, in terms of the numbers that we've produced, we said the combination of these two measures, reducing energy bills by removing one of the policy levies and giving this VAT cut, would put £270 back into people's pockets. Factored into that is the estimation that only half of that VAT cut would get passed on to the consumer, and that is modelled based on statistics that we have from the government's own figures from previous VAT cuts. And we think that is acceptable right now. Quite frankly, if you think about hospitality, they often have workers on lower salaries, and they do not just prop up our high street, they make our high streets what they are. And we want hospitality to thrive as a sector. They often give young people their first chance. They're a fantastic employer for people who need flexible work, who are trying to get back into the workplace. And we all love going out to hospitality. All of us know, all of us remember the place we went to on a particular date, somewhere we went to with a family occasion. We remember the places we went to for births and marriages and everything else. Hospitality is a core part of our communities, and we have got to save hospitality whilst also getting our economy going again. And this would be a real growth measure. ITV next. Hi.
Harry Horton, ITV News. Your party's got experience of breaking pre-election promises. You talked about the government laying the groundwork for breaking its manifesto pledge on tax. What would be the impact, do you think, on this government and on trust in politics in general if they were to break that pledge on not raising income tax? And then secondly, what do you think about the notion of a young, ambitious colleague challenging an older, less popular party leader?
Daisy Cooper there, continuing to take some questions after she outlined her plans for a VAT cut for hospitality to be paid for by an extra tax on banks. Still not entirely clear exactly how that tax would work. And of course, it is a sector that does already pay a premium tax rate to other sectors. It's been an action-packed show.
It has. All good things go ahead of that budget, which I think is what Daisy Cooper's trying to do too. More from us tomorrow. Up next, it is Gareth Barlow.